Hello. It is 6 o'clock on Wednesday, June 15th. At this point, I would like to call the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School Board meeting to order. I'm going to make some quick introductions, starting over on my left, because I have to do that. Patrick West, principal of the middle school, is here. Tim Grisone, principal of the high school, is here. Beth Williams and Kate Stoll are school board members. I'm Holly Durlow-Babcock, chair. To my right is Andrew Corey, our superintendent of schools. Next to him is Gina Bergskog, our assistant superintendent of schools. Cindy Van Conant is next to her. She's a school board member. Linda Sherwood, our assistant BA. And Krista Whalen rounds us out with, at the end, also a school board member. Just for the public who are listening to know. At this point, I'd like to appoint a process observer. Krista will be our process observer. Excellent. And in agenda adjustments, I have one. Do you have any others? I have a quick one at the end before we do process observer. I'd like to do a bit of agenda building so we can talk about the July meeting and that kind of thing. So that's just agenda building before that. Do you have anything?
Yes, I had sent out information regarding a STEM request, and I'd like to put that under discussion with the potential to be a deliberative item. And I'd like it to follow Linda's revenue and expense report because it'll tie itself right into that.
STEM request, okay. Thank you. All right. Are there any objections to those agenda adjustments? And joining us now at 6:01 is Tom Solon.
We start early?
We started at 6 o'clock on the dot. To the second. Okay. So at this point, I guess we'll go to nominations, resignations, and correspondence. And I'm going to start with our first resignation that I'd like to read to the public. Andy and Holly, I'm writing to formally tender my resignation from the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School Board effective today. This was written on June 2nd, 2022. I have accepted a position as counsel for the Department of Education, serving as the attorney for the commissioner. It has been my honor to serve as a co-op school board member since 2016 alongside Krista Whalen, Tom Solon, and Cindy Van Conant. Without their wisdom, experience, and dedication to the board and the students in the district, the Hollis Brookline School District would not be the strong district that it is today. The board should be recognized for its research, analysis, and commitment to public education of every child in the district. I will miss serving on the board along all of these dedicated members and Chair Babcock. I will especially miss the opportunities to debate with Tom Solon. Likewise, I would be remiss not to acknowledge all that I have learned from Superintendent Corey and Assistant Superintendent Bergskog during my service on the board. Special recognition must go to our beloved and remembered Amy Rowe. Everything I know about special education and student services I learned from Amy Rowe. We were all privileged to work with Amy and learn from someone who is well-researched, a creative problem solver, and with an unstoppable passion for students. Thank you to the Hollis community who entrusted me to serve as a board member, representing your voice and our students. It was a privilege to be your representative. Very truly yours, Elizabeth Brown. So, I need a motion to accept, with regret, the resignation of Elizabeth Brown from the co-op school board.
Does the board have to approve the resignation?
I don't think so.
We don't have to? Okay, great.
I would just like to say thank you to Liz for all
Yeah,
of her service.
absolutely.
And thank you to Liz for all of her service and her dedication to the board and all of the things that she did outside that the public didn't see. She worked very hard for the students in this district and supported them with intelligence and passion, and she will be missed on the board.
Absolutely. Is there anyone else? I wanted to say the same thing. I want to thank Liz for her dedication and service to our students and community. Her sense of humor, sharp mind, and contributions will be sorely missed here. So, anyone else? Okay, so I don't need to make a motion. All right. Could we talk just quickly about the process
Sure.
for the public?
Yep.
So that if there's anyone out there listening, we now have an opening on the Hollis side of the co-op school board.
What will happen is tomorrow we will post that to the SAU and the co-op websites, so it'll become available. And then we will ask candidates to reach out and contact the school board chair and the administration, just so we have those to come in. We would invite those candidates to the July meeting. where they would be interviewed. Then typically what we've done, depending on what the board chooses to do, is they have two options. They could take a recess right then and vote to seat the person that night, or they could decide that they would rather discuss it after the meeting is over and notify the person, and they would be seated at the August meeting after being sworn in. If we were going to seat them that night, we would need to have the school district clerk here to swear them in. In terms of the seat would be filled until March of next year, when anybody who is interested in running would, from on the Hollis side, would have the ability to put in the paperwork and run for the open seat.
Thank you, that's helpful. Okay, are there any other nominations, resignations, and correspondence?
I have a smattering of both. First, I have a resignation. As the school board is aware, Stephen Corpero has accepted an administrative position in Milford. I want to thank Steve for his dedicated service and wish him all the best as he moves on. And I need a motion to accept Steve's resignation.
So moved.
Moved by Tom, seconded by Beth. I just want to comment that Steve's a beloved teacher here, and he will be missed by many of our students. He made a difference in a lot of our kids' lives, and we wish him all the best. I wish him all the best in our future endeavors, in his future endeavors. Are there any other comments? Okay, all those in favor? I believe that's 6-0. No, yes, 6. Are there 6 of us here?
Yes.
6, thank you. Okay.
Next, I have some nominations. The first one is Jennifer Labonte, Labonte. She's being hired for a social studies position at the middle school. Jennifer has her bachelor's in history and arts from Simmons College in 1997, and her master's in education is also from Simmons. She will be joining us at a master's, step 18, for a salary of $77,792.
Okay, I need a motion to accept the nomination of Jennifer LeBon as a social studies teacher at Hollis Brookline Middle School, Master's Step 18, with a salary of $77,792.
So moved.
Moved by Tom, seconded by Beth. Any questions on this hire? All those in,
Was she employed somewhere else prior to coming here?
Most recently, she comes from the middle school in Raymond, but she spent the bulk of her career teaching in Massachusetts.
Okay, thank you.
okay. All those in favor? 6-0.
The next nomination is for Colleen Hoffman, Hoffman, for a position of physical education at the middle school. She has her bachelor's in kinesiology and physical education from the University of Rhode Island, and she has her master's in physical education from Minnesota State University. She would be, her degree is master's plus 15, step 12, for a salary of $68,454.
So again, I need a motion to accept the nomination of Colleen Hoffman for a physical education position at Hollis Brookline Middle School, Master's plus 15, Step 12, with a salary of $68,454.
So moved.
Moved by Tom.
Second.
Second by Beth. Are there any questions on this hire? Same question, experience before? Teach, yeah, she's Step 12, so.
Yes, she also comes to us with experience from Massachusetts. She's recently moved to the area. I'm very excited about her background and what she can bring to us.
Great. All those in favor? 6-0.
The last nomination tonight is for Alexis Gilbert, Gilbert. She'll be our ELL teacher, English as a second language, at Hollis Brookline Middle School. She has her bachelor's in visual arts and graphic design from Farmingdale State, and her master's in TESOL from Stony Brook University. And she will be joining us as a master's step 3 for a salary of $53,147.
Okay, so I need a motion to accept the nomination of Alexis Gilbert as the ELL teacher at HBMS, Hollis Brookline Middle School, a master's step 3 with a salary of $53,147.
So moved.
Moved by Tom.
Second.
Second by Beth. Again, any questions? I think we're okay. Okay. All those in favor? 6-0. Did I say 6-0? Okay. All right.
And then I just have a couple comments regarding correspondence. I wanted to publicly thank Tim and the high school administration and staff and everybody who participated and worked behind the scenes to put on just an outstanding graduation. It went very, very well. I heard many, many compliments, and it was fun to participate in and be back to what I'll call basically 100% quote, normal graduation ceremony again. So kudos to Tim.
Absolutely.
I also wanted to thank our athletic department and our coaches. We had a tremendous spring for all our teams, just all our teams. But I do want to recognize, first of all, girls lacrosse was in the championship game. Boys volleyball were the state champions. Boys baseball were the state champions. And then we had girls and boys from our track team that competed not only in the meet of champions, but in New England as well.
Excellent.
And we were very, very well represented. And I want to thank all of those coaches and our athletes for just a tremendous spring. You know, they just do a great job going about their business and balancing the many things that an athlete has to balance. And lastly, I know we're going to discuss it when we do agenda planning, but for our July meeting, I'd like to make sure we put on the agenda a curriculum discussion. A number of years back, pre-COVID, we were doing a lot more with bringing teachers to the board and identifying content area and talking about the content area. And I'd really like to get back to that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And I'd also like to have our opening discussion for 2024 in July as well. So as I always tell the board, if there are certain items or things that you know are being brought up in the community, if you could bring your list together, that allows Kelly, myself, Gina, and Lauren and Linda to start working on that process moving forward. And that's what I have for nominations, resignations, and correspondence.
Thank you very much. Great. So we'll move on to approval of the minutes. The first set of minutes that we need to approve are from the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School Board of May 18th, 2022. The following amendments were offered. Page 3, line 29, replace S with Ms. Page 10, line 21, replace teacher with teach. Page 12, line 16, replace the period with a comma. And page 14, line 20, replace year with years. I need a motion to accept as amended.
Can I add an extra?
Sure, and I have another amendment to offer before we have the motion.
Yeah, page 17, line 14, replace Williams with Whalen. Just
Okay, so page 17, line 14, replace Williams with Whalen.
yes, please.
Okay,
And then I'll make the motion.
okay, that's fine. So I need a motion to accept.
Yes.
Moved by Beth. I need a second. Tom. And then the only people who can vote are Beth, Tom, Holly. You were here too, Cindy, right? Okay, so all those in favor? Did you have questions or comments?
I just want to know if.
I don't know if she was-
Krista approves that, because she wasn't here.
It's reads Krista Williams, and it's a committee that I'm
Okay.
on, so yes,
Okay.
it's
Right.
a strictly clerical. We
And
don't-
Krista,
yeah.
were you here for part of this meeting? And then, no, you were not at all for this one. The one before was the one that you had to step out, right? Okay. So members Stoll, Brown, and Whalen were absent. Okay, so all those in favor of those minutes? 4. All those opposed? 0. And abstentions? 2. So the vote is 4-0-2. The next set of minutes that we have to approve are the non-public minutes from the May 18th, 2022 meeting. The following amendments were offered. Page 1, line 40, correct the spelling of Corey, and page 1, line 34, insert questions following specific. I need a motion to accept. Motion by Beth, up, and seconded by Cindy. Are there any comments on these? So only for those 4 members, all those in favor? 4, nays, 0, and abstentions, 2. So 4-0-2. Okay, so at this point, I think the public hearing was advertised to begin at 6 o'clock, so we can start it now.
Correct.
And this public hearing is being held in accordance with RSA 198:20-C to expend funds from the Maintenance Trust Fund. I need a motion to recess this meeting to the conclusion of the public hearing. Moved by Tom, second by Beth. And all those in favor? 6-0, so we are in recess at, I need a watch.
6:14.
Thank you. It's like you have to pull up my phone. 6:14 PM. Okay, now I need I just need those. Do I need those? Oh, I need to sign those, okay. All right, public hearing outline. Here we go. So, I guess I don't call this to order, right? We just go into it?
No, I'm
Right.
gonna turn it over to me.
I'm gonna turn it over to you. Excellent.
In
Great, I
your
love
board
when I do
packet,
that.
you were provided with an update from our business administrator, but I'd like to just go through that and walk you through it. The background, principals Tim Gazone and Patrick West identified several needed repairs and improvements for their respective buildings during the budget process. At the budget hearing for FY '23, the Hollis Brookline Budget Committee recommended, along with the Hollis Brookline School Board, that the funding source for these particular items be the Hollis Brookline Maintenance Expendable Trust. So the FY '23 requested items were Phase 7 of 10, Section 1 for a piece of roof at Hollis Brookline High School at a cost of $70,000. We also had HVAC upgrades, regular maintenance upgrades to Hollis Brookline Middle School for $60,000, and road paving for $70,000. This is going to be the road to the newer pavement at Cavalier Court, so we're starting to connect the pieces that we had done. So that was the total requested was $200,000. Our current balance in the trust is $165,766. We added $200,000 in FY 2023. Our expenditures are exactly that $200,000. The board may recall that we, a number of years back, put aside about 50% of the elevator, and we just keep that encumbered for, in case something were to go wrong with the middle school elevator. So those funds are there, but it kind of encumbered. So that gives us an available balance of $122,766 anticipated. And I'd be, also on this, Kelly also just wanted to give you an update on the Special Education Trust. We had a current balance of $205,403. The voters approved adding $25,000 to that. At this point, we are not projecting any expenditures, so our ending balance anticipated would be $230,403 for the Special Ed Expendable Trust. And I'd be happy to take any questions on the Maintenance Trust that the board may have.
Just point of order, this is a public hearing,
Right.
should the board be taking?
The board typically
comment.
will comment after we come out of the public hearing.
And
Yes,
And
sir.
during
questions.
deliberations, right.
Correct.
During deliberations, we would
But
ask.
you asked if,
I did, and I'm mistaken, I'm sorry.
Okay,
this is the
I just
public
wanted to
meeting.
clarify.
Yeah, there's no public, so I just figured I was kind of skipping a step, and I don't need to.
So at this point, I would open the floor for public comment at 6:17 PM. Seeing none. Can I wait like a second? Let me just wait a second. Okay, seeing none, I'd like to close the
You
floor
want
for
me to run
public.
to the podium
No,
for a
I feel like I should at least like breathe. Okay, I'd like to close I'm going to close the public hearing now at 6:17 PM. And now we will come out of recess at 6:17 PM and resume our regularly scheduled programming. Okay, so, moving on. We have public input on our agenda items at this point.
It's very early, does that matter?
It's a little early, so we can either, how early is it?
45 minutes.
Okay, so this is what we can do. We can open the floor for public input. We control this. If someone comes in later, we can reopen the floor for public input. I think
Sounds
that's
good.
the best way to move forward with this. So, at this point, I'm opening the floor for public input at 6:18 PM, 6:19 PM. And seeing none, I am temporarily closing and possibly permanently closing the floor for public input at 6:19 PM. I'm gonna write those numbers down in case Dawn calls me. There we go. Okay, so, let's move on to the principal and athletic reports, but let's start with Patrick, because just so the public knows, Patrick's, the building is hosting the luau tonight, and Patrick is, going to probably be leaving us shortly to be able to monitor and participate in the dancing.
Maybe not so much the dancing.
Okay, well,
Definitely
that's
be-
fine, but you know, kids might. Go ahead, Patrick, so we'd like to hear your report.
Sure.
now.
So as you mentioned, we have the end of the year luau dance going on right now from 6 to 8 p.m. There's a picture presentation that'll show a number of students growing up through the years that parents submitted. That'll be starting around 7:15. We also have our award ceremony on Friday from 7:45 a.m. to 9 a.m. Parents and guardians and students are welcome to attend. An invitation has been sent out directly to parents and guardians of students who are receiving an award. If families cannot attend, we will be live streaming the event. The ceremony will include academic awards, but will be highlighted by the 8th grade Robert E. Kelly Award. One piece that I was really impressed with and really happy about is that 117 different students will be receiving an academic award on Friday. Field trips have started up again this spring, which has been great. Our 8th grade teams have gone on a few. Team Bartlett went on a hike to Beaver Brook. It wasn't just a typical hike. They had a really cool activity, team building activity that involved geocaching, compassing, and they actually used a cell phone as well. And students were tasked with going out and finding different birdhouse boxes, and there were clues inside, and they had to use GPS navigation to kind of coordinate where those boxes were and work together. And I thought it was a really, really nice event, given that it was just in Beaver Brook. And then this past week, Team Bartlett also went to Mount Monadnock on Monday, and I was reminded of how challenging that hike was. Just about all of the students made it to the top, and it was a great trip, great weather. The teachers did a really nice job putting on those two hiking trips. Team Da Vinci, they went to Boston, Massachusetts on June 3rd to visit the Freedom Trails. Students were given a location on the Freedom Trail to research and present to their classmates, which that image to the left shows. The students also had an opportunity to explore Boston outside of the Freedom Trails, and it seemed like students really enjoyed visiting Boston and kind of having your typical field trip again. I'd like to recognize Miss Jennifer McLeod. She has been nominated for Teacher of the Year, but she has actually made it to the semifinal round, which will be announced at the beginning of next school year. So congratulations to Jen McLeod. As you heard, Colleen Hoffman will be teaching 7th grade PE for us next year. We also just hired also Jennifer Labonte, who will be doing 7th grade social studies for us. And at the bottom there is just our extracurricular activity numbers for the year. All the different clubs that we hosted. There were a couple clubs that we didn't host this year for a few different reasons, but all the clubs that we did run, those are the numbers that students were involved with. And I think you have the athletic numbers, correct? For
They're on Brian's report,
Yep. And just some upcoming dates.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any comments or questions for Patrick? Well, I first of all, am always happy to hear about field trips and activities, and I think it's great to use a resource like Beaver Brook. It's awesome. And I want to congratulate Jen McLeod, because, excellence is great, and I appreciate her time and effort with our students. And I want to thank you for including those extracurricular activities. We have about 400 students in the middle school?
Yeah, close to 370, yeah, just under
370.
400. Yep.
So clearly, these could be doubles and whatever, but participation's at significantly over 50%. That's terrific. Just in our clubs.
Just in our clubs.
That's excellent. Excellent news. Thank you. Anyone else have questions for Patrick?
No, I thought those field trips were great, though. Those are really, and I love that they were just going on the Freedom Trail, but had to learn something about it, teaching the kids, and I think that's great. And utilizing Beaver Brook is fantastic. So.
I want to go. I need a geocache. I think that sounds like fun. Okay. All right. Anyone else? Okay. So just whenever you need to leave, Patrick, we are going to touch on stipends. So if we have any specific questions, but I think you're okay to go.
Okay, thank you.
You're okay to go. I think
And
enough
if anybody
people
would
here
like to
can.
join or take a break,
Yep,
feel free.
Beth, you're not allowed to leave. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So moving forward to Tim, do you want to start with athletics, or do you
Sure.
want to do your report first?
Yeah, I can do Brian's first. Congratulations to the middle school boys and girls track teams, as well as the boys lacrosse team. They won their Tri-County League Championship, so
Oh, wow.
congratulations to those guys. Looking forward to seeing those athletes come up to the high school. As far as the high school spring season went, Mr. Corey highlighted a couple of our state championships. The boys volleyball team as well as the baseball team took home took home the crown, and our girls lax team had another great season this year, finishing runner-up to a really strong Portsmouth team. As Mr. Corey highlighted, we did have two athletes qualify for the New England Championships, and we had one of those attend the New England Championship and compete amongst the best up here in New England. We had our unified track team wrap up their season at the state championship at Alvern, and we had several place winners. Softball team made it all the way to the quarterfinals, lost a tough 1-0 game to a John Stark who advanced on to the finals. So another really strong season for our our softball team. Boys lacrosse fell in the playoffs to a tough Timberlane team, and our girls tennis team fell in the quarterfinals after upsetting Bow in the prelims. Another note here, we recognized 26 NHIAA, NHADA Scholar Athletes at just this past Monday night's Sports Awards, which was a new ceremony that we put on this year for the first time. It was a really nice evening. We highlighted individual award winners as well as our state champion and runner-up teams from throughout the school year. It wasn't just the spring, so it was a full year sports awards. We recognized students for college signings. We recognized some of the usual awards, sports awards that typically took part in the senior night awards, but we teased those out and made for a special singular sports awards, including all 3 sports seasons. So it was a really nice presentation, well attended, and overall a success. Mr. Bumpus also included on here his participation numbers. I won't necessarily go through each individual one, just highlight, it looks like our participation numbers at the high school are as high as they've been since the 18-19 school year. And the middle school, it looks like it's as high as it's been in over 5 years. So participation numbers are up across the board, so that's good to see. And I am open to any questions on Mr. Bumpus's sports report for the month.
Any questions on the athletic report?
No, congratulations to all the
Yeah.
athletes, wow.
I don't know of any day where we've had graduation and 2 state championships on the same day. So it's a
I
pretty
know, that
special
was
day.
a crazy day. It was very exciting. And
Pretty
it's
special
also, I mean, we've had, is it 4 state champions this year?
We had 4.
4.
Yep, yep.
Wrestling, girls swim team.
Yep.
And the
then the 2 spring
and the
sports.
2
Yeah,
spring
two
sports,
spring
just at the high
sports.
school. And then we had 3 this spring, like 3 tri-county league champions at the middle school, and maybe others, or I don't know.
From earlier in the season, I can't speak
Right,
to
right.
the winner in the fall at the middle school. I can't speak.
And just your opinion, so I know you've been around for the old sports awards, the, you know, every
Yep.
seasonal
Seasonal ones, yep.
sports awards. Did you feel like this was a,
I did. I thought it was a little bit more of a formal event. It highlighted not just the season, or not even just the year, but for some of our seniors who took home some recognition, highlighting their careers.
Right.
So, you know, you had the 12-season athlete recognition for
yeah,
students
those
who took
lovely
part.
sweatshirts, yeah.
We have new sweatshirts put on, that Brian had designed. Very, very nice sweatshirts for our 12-season athletes.
Oh, that's great.
But overall, yes, I think it was a really nice event that I hope to continue.
And just to clarify for anyone in the public out there, coaches awards and team awards were handed out at individual team meetings at the end of every single season. And
Yep.
coaches were required to hold a meeting, to do a meeting or a banquet or a dinner or whatever they wanted to do, but,
That's
so,
correct. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Just so people know that kids are still getting like coaches awards and MVPs and all that kind of stuff.
Yep,
It's still
certainly.
being handed out, just
Yep.
not at the large scale event.
Correct.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Tim regarding that? Okay. So Tim will do your principal's report and then we'll talk stipends. How's that sound?
Sounds good. All right, so the last month has been a very eventful one up at the high school. We returned to some traditional activities that I want to highlight here. So for the first time since the fall of 2019, we had guitar night in front of a full capacity audience. It was a 2-night event, and it included musical performances by a number of student bands from across all 4 grade levels in a variety of musical genres. It was a good night. It's always great seeing the kids in their element, and as always, they did impress. We also, for the first time since 2019, had our local U.S. military veterans return to the classroom. Mr. Duval and our social studies department put on a Q&A session, which has been a tradition in the spring months right around Memorial Day, to meet with our students, to present their experiences having served in the military. The panel included recent graduates who are currently serving in the military as well. It was a very nice event to return to with some familiar local veteran faces coming back to the high school. The Senior Quest course that we offer our students was taught by Mr. Perry this year, and we had our student presentations. We invited classrooms to attend. Teachers brought their respective classes down. We had, parents in the audience, and senior presentations. As always, it's always impressive to see the degree of professionalism in our seniors as they're moving on. The presentations were very in-depth and certainly demonstrated some pretty in-depth research that students conducted. So kudos to Mr. Perry and the students in Senior Quest. And we had our final theater performance of the year. Mr. Barbosa directed our Pride and Prejudice play this spring, and everything from the set, the costumes, and of course our student actors and tech crew behind the scenes were phenomenal in every way. Some things that did not make the report this month that did take place. We had our first, we had a Walk for Change event, which included a wide variety of student-led, student-designed activities, which was part of the Mental Health Awareness Month in May. We also had our Senior Night Awards back to traditional format for that, and our Class Day Awards back to traditional format for that. I am open to any questions or comments on the report.
Excellent, Tim, thank you. Any questions?
All of it's very impressive, but the Senior Quest program is so impressive to me, and it seems like when did we start that, like 5 years ago?
Probably close to that, maybe a little
Something
more
like
than
that?
I think it was right around when I was, when I first left, so
When you
yes,
first
it
left,
would have been like
yeah.
6 or 7 years ago.
And I feel like have our numbers been increasing every year?
They are, off the top of my head, healthy again, I know that. I think they're definitely higher than when when the course was originally designed. I think it's an attractive course for students who have special interest in a particular area and looking to, further their research, and, provides the guidance and the oversight and the supervision. And, you see some pretty impressive work done by young adults.
I agree.
It's
I
high
know.
level.
I'd like to
high
get
level.
that even advertised more, like in the newspaper and stuff, because some of these projects that these kids do,
Incredible.
I mean, college level or beyond. I think.
Exactly.
So would it be
Really.
too much on the kids to have somebody from like the Hollis Brookline News Online come in and watch it and report on it? Is that a possibility, or is that?
Yeah, I would say
Is
so.
that like
I
a privacy
I think we could
thing?
certainly open up the door for that. I talked to
Certainly
Mr.
at the end of
Perry,
the year,
yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, like a permission thing. Okay, just,
Yeah, just so impressive, so,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, highlighting would be good.
Are we still offering it with both an honors and a non-honors option?
I don't think we ever
No.
did.
Yeah, we did. You could opt.
We did? Yeah, but no, now it's just a, yeah.
It's a non-weighted, is it weighted or?
No, non-weighted.
Okay.
no.
And it's 2 periods, right? No, it's 1 period?
period.
Okay, so I think that was the beginning, it was 2 periods or something like that, okay. Great. Thank you, Tim. Any other questions? I just want to congratulate and extend my congratulations to all, you know, to Mr. Perry, to Mr. Barbosa, to Mr. Duval. And I think Mr. Perry did guitar night too, right?
Mr. and
Senior-
Mrs., yep.
Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Perry. So all of that extra time and effort that our staff puts in to create experiences for our students is just heartening. So thank you
Was
to
there a
them.
staff band this year?
We had staff participants.
But they didn't have a
There
single
wasn't-
band?
There was in the.
In the fall, they
there
did. In the
was,
fall,
and
they had
were
a full
excellent.
ensemble.
Yes,
Okay.
they were
Yeah.
That's
excellent
great.
in the fall.
Congratulations to them.
Which
And
was
I'm,
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame night.
I'm super happy that you brought back the walk, because I don't
Yeah.
think we've done that in a long time, and I think that's a really nice way for kids to, you know, connect, and, yeah, I love that, so thank you for doing that. Okay. Tim, I think at this point, I think we have to talk about stipends. We don't take a formal vote on this, right? We just, it needs to be presented to the board as a,
We are required to approve them annually.
so then we have to make a motion and approve them, right?
Well, what we typically do is, we have been using this meeting to have a discussion around the stipends, identify if there was any concerns with them, and then the July meeting, which we do the budget, we then make the formal kind of, what I'll say, request and
Okay.
approval to include in the budget that Club A is increasing or moving a tier or
Okay.
that. So tonight is more to get feedback, if people feel that something is undercompensated, that the requirements have changed drastically, or if a building principal sees a need for us to do something to be able to attract people to the position.
Okay, so, I mean, there's no need to, we have the stipend tables in front of us. Tim, do you have anything that
Are
you
any
want?
of them changes, I guess is the big
Yeah.
question.
So I can probably answer that question because I
Yeah, you do.
did a lot of because we had to look at middle school and high school and athletics. So I will note that I did make a mistake under House Brookline High School extracurricular stipend table. I forgot that we approved already in the FY23 budget process to move Tri-M from Tier 1 to Tier 4. So Tri-M should be in Tier 4 under $1,200.
I'm sorry, Gina, I can't hear you. What did you say?
So the Tri-M
Tri-M
okay.
moves from
is
here.
right now in Tier 1, but as
14.
part of the new items last year,
It's here.
it was approved for FY23 to move to Tier
was sent
4.
today.
Okay, thank you.
So we have moved that,
No, I printed this, but you can look at it.
but
with me.
I didn't have that appropriately. Okay, and then,
So that's extracurricular athletics.
so since the last time
Yeah,
this was
this is-
published for the board, there were some changes. So I will just identify some of those changes. Looking at the middle school extracurricular stipend table, a building safety committee stipend was added, and that's under Tier 3 for $1,000.
Oh, it's under this one,
Middle
Okay.
school, yep.
there.
And what else? Looking at the high school extracurricular stipend table, Herstory and I believe it was Latin Club, those were added as clubs, and we discussed adding them to the tiers, but they had not been formally presented in paper form to the board, so they are in Tier 1 at $400 for next year. So
Is
those are,
that building safety committee a student committee?
so every building has a building safety committee that participates in our SAU-wide committee. So it's not a student, but do we have students on our high school one, that one?
So we selected a student this year to take part as a
But
representative.
in all of our other buildings, no.
So I don't know that that's an extracurricular
I mean,
act.
Yep, and so that's a good point, but it is a stipend, so it appeared on the chart. So no, I appreciate you.
There are other stipends that we do that don't show up in here. I don't think this comes under the requirement that the board review and approve
Okay.
annually.
the
Those-
building safety ones. and
The
like-
ones that are not student.
Okay, no, that's a good distinction.
Okay.
And also, you can see that it appears in Tier 3, graduation stipend 1 and 2, due to the tremendous amount of work that's involved in putting on the graduation.
Now, again, is that just a staff stipend?
It is, but it's for the students. That involves working with the students and working with the siblings of the students who participate. So We could absolutely take it off.
For example, we don't include things like the board chair, I mean, the department head.
No, we don't
stipends.
include
Those
that.
are in the
However, those
contract.
are in the contract.
But these, so our committee, I read through the contract, and I didn't see any language in the contract that there's compensation. Can we not talk about the contract?
For?
Compensation for committees,
There isn't
Right.
contractually.
right? So,
Is every stipend that teachers receive that's not covered by the contract now in these tables?
No.
Yes and no. So the ones that are not are specifically identified somewhere else.
Okay, so my point therefore is, we either put all staff ones in here as well, or we put none and keep this exclusively the ones that are curricular, you know.
Yeah, and no, and I just want to add a couple things. Some of the ones that are not are SAU level or grant-funded stipends, so they're processed financially the same way, but the funding source is different. So those absolutely, I believe, need to stay different
Yeah.
and separate. And I'm happy to remove the graduation committee and the building safety committee stipends. But I did want to discuss the fact that the process of identifying an appropriate amount stays true to the tiered system of looking at the hours involved and thinking about that commitment rather than coming up with a number out of the
I
blue.
think it's worth doing it. I think it's worth formalizing it and making sure we capture all of them. But I would prefer personally, I'd prefer they were categorized
I agree.
differently
Okay.
as not being co and extracurricular, as them being
like
just staff
stipends, like like pull them out and create like a third table. There you go. That's just one more thing.
I think I would prefer to pull them out and do a third table and have the yearly oversight so that everybody always knows.
I'm fine-
you know,
I'm fine with that.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I just want it to be out there to the community, these are what we fund.
Right. Right.
And I think this process has allowed us to become more transparent in that. And I think, to your point, Tom, if we take those items, even if it was ones funded from different sources, I think that would be very good for people to know.
Helps us keep current. One of the
Right.
reasons we want to do
Yeah.
this is so the board doesn't forget about
Right.
them and let them stagnate.
Yeah.
We want to be competitive in their stipends as well. It was just confusing for me, because I assumed that all of these were student activities that had staff oversight or support.
Okay, I have another question related to, I think yearbook is on this list somewhere. I saw it earlier. I can't find it now.
Well, the yearbook became,
I know, that's what I'm getting to, so let me talk. Yearbook and newspaper are both being covered under a course now. And so my question is, teachers, I thought I saw yearbook on here.
Capcom is tier
middle
6.
school, but
Tier
it's-
6, there's one at the, is there not a yearbook?
It is for middle school.
Okay,
I
It
only
should
see
be
them.
tier 8.
okay.
I thought they said we didn't have it this year, but we're gonna have it next year.
So my question is that newspaper and yearbook are both being taught in a course right now, and I feel like if there is a stipend for them, which I thought I saw one this morning, but you're right, it was in the middle school one. If there's a stipend for those positions and those staff who are doing that work, because I know those create extra work, I feel like there should be an extracurricular element to those courses, meaning that even though most of the bulk of the work is done during the day in the journalism class or the yearbook class, there needs to be an opportunity for other students, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, who aren't in the class to participate, take pictures, check in, do that kind of thing. If it's a stipended position, that's my feeling on that. So I don't know who answers me
I
that.
think it goes beyond that. I think, just in discussion, I thought that you were a strong advocate to make it available.
I believe it
staff.
should be available, yes. I think those two courses should have an extracurricular element, but especially if there's a stipend associated with it. So,
Agreed, and that would be my expectation as well.
Okay.
And we can certainly,
There is a yearbook high school stipend.
Yeah, am I just not seeing it?
But
No,
I don't see it.
it's an accounting error. So we look
Okay.
at what the stipends were paid out and the individual is employed in one of our other districts.
Right,
And so it didn't show up on the co-op
Okay,
stipend
so-
page.
But the question is that activity currently something that someone who is not in the class can participate in?
The class is beginning in the fall.
This is all
So
new thing.
this will be brand new territory starting in the fall. It was just approved in the program of studies. So right now, it's an extracurricular entirely. But as it transitions, the question is, should it be limited to just those students in the course? Or should it be those students in the course are certainly dedicated and have a huge role in it, but then there are any other students out there that might want to, be the volleyball liaison and just, bring in pictures and stories and whatever, or do that all year long and be able to do that after school.
And that's what I'm advocating for, what she just said, that should be what be happening in those two classes.
Yep, and I
So-
can certainly communicate that
Okay.
with our staff.
And when we talked about the program studies, when we did this back in the fall, we said after this next year, we'll come back and or during the program studies conversation in the fall again, we'll talk about whether this class thing whether it's working, right? Like, and what the curriculum is and how it's going and that kind of an update.
But I, just to agree and support, if there's going to be a stipend paid, there's an assumption that there's something being done beyond the classroom role.
And then my other question is just in general, and I think you touched on it, Gina, but like, when you look at this list of sports, I want people to understand how the decisions are made. Is it based on hourly commitment? Because we have certain,
Tiers.
sports that have a higher tier for coaching, but they're not more important than the other sports. They just require more hours. Is that?
Absolutely, and so we look at that, and I'll bring something to your attention specifically. Looking at the high school athletic stipend table, you can see there's a ski team bus chaperone that doesn't fit into a tier at $450. It's right below tier 1. So this year, Crotchet Mountain only had 1 day available for us to practice. Historically, we have 2 days. So what we did, because that time commitment was cut in half, we cut the stipend in half and paid $450 for once a week
I'm pretty
versus
aware. Yeah.
versus twice a week. But so absolutely, these are directly tied to average hours involved, while thinking that all of them will make the playoffs, et cetera.
Right.
But managing, looking at the times of the practices, the length of them, the number of games, all of that.
Okay. Thank you.
And just another piece of clarification, looking at the middle school athletic stipend table, there were 2 stipends, track stats under tier 1, and playoffs total that we are looking to eliminate for next year. But they are currently there, and so they appear on the table, but we're looking to
Okay.
eliminate those.
So
I'm sorry, which two?
Track stats under tier 1, it's the only thing in tier 1 for the middle school. And then in tier 2, there's playoffs total.
what does that mean, playoffs total?
So it dates back to our former athletic director, and if a team made the playoffs, there were differentials. But Brian's approach, the last time he redid the values of the tiers in 2019, he incorporated those playoff games into the stipends. So they are in the budget, they have not been removed, but they should have been at the time when we reevaluated these. So to be transparent, these 2 items have been in our budget, but we have not paid them out since Ms. Bushman has come on board.
So what we need to do then is make sure they're removed for when we vote on this.
Exactly.
So they'll be off the table
Yeah.
and out of the table. Okay, great. So you guys will take care of that.
Yep.
Okay. Are there any other questions on this? Tom?
I see that for the last 3 years, the fishing participation has dropped way down.
Bass fishing?
Yeah, is there an expectation that that's gonna increase? Because I'm not sure that 3 or 4 members is consistent with what we have normally had for thresholds for activity.
It is pretty low.
It is pretty low.
There was a lot of interest really early on, and it grew, and then it fell off a cliff with COVID.
Right.
But we thought it was gonna recover, and I know in other schools it has, but
Right.
I don't know that we can really.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point, and I will circle back with Brian about
Yeah.
this as we look to, because we are looking to make some philosophical shifts to some of our athletic programs, and it makes sense that if we're not pulling the numbers, then we
Okay.
shift the funds. But I'd be curious to see what the interest would be like in the fall, now that things are a little bit more normal.
The other question I have is about unified sports. Is there a significantly reduced coaching workload compared to the traditional equivalent sports? The reason I'm asking is that we're stipending the coaching of those quite a bit lower than the
Yep.
other sports.
Well, they don't have as many games and things.
Is that-
They have a
So they
lot.
practice once a week.
Only, oh, okay.
Yeah, they-
That
they-
explains,
yeah.
I didn't, that's what I was
Yeah.
checking, because certainly I don't want to discourage our support people from
Thank you.
doing it.
Yeah. And that's my other question. So, if you look at Brian's athletic report, there's significant coaching hires that need to be done. And some of these hires, some of these positions have been repetitively vacant. So is it time to have a conversation about increasing these stipends? And what would the recommendation be? And I have multiple questions. Is the lack of interest specifically just money, or is there something else going on that we're struggling? Are we struggling to fill positions? And that kind of thing. Like, I understand, like, extracurricular-wise, with the pandemic, trying to get everything running again, but is there something the board could do to potentially increase these?
I think as part of the July meeting, that's gonna be our recommendation, because really the last time they were looked at was 2019. So
Okay.
it's time for adjustments. I will say that athletics seems to go through peaks and valleys, and we seem to be coming back again. I think COVID has kind of helped that, because kids are looking for things to do. I think across the state, there's a problem getting coaches, because it's a monumental time commitment, but not a lot of dollars. I mean, if you go back, it's 30 years ago, I mean, these salaries haven't changed much
They
from when I
haven't.
was a head coach, in the state of New Hampshire. And New Hampshire really hasn't moved that much, so we do need to look at that. And I do think there are positions that are very difficult to fill. Some things are getting slightly easier for us, because now with the turf field and lights, a coach doesn't have to practice right after school every day. I think the other thing that has assisted us with athletics coming back is by having an athletic trainer. We have that year-round, weight room conditioning supervision piece, and the comfort level around injuries. There was one point where we were seeing kids shy away from playing because of head injuries and concussions, which is very serious. But now having a trainer on board, doing the testing and all those things, we're mitigating some of the risks, so families have a greater comfort level. But I think both in terms of like our school plays and the quality of those productions and things like that, and again, to me, it's about having opportunities for kids to show their talent. And for some of our students, their talents don't exist necessarily, their strength is not math, science, English, and history. It is being able to sing, being able to dance, being in a play, hitting a ball, running track. So what we want to do is make sure this table allows us to provide opportunities for children to show off their talents.
Oh, I agree.
So, go ahead.
May I-
Go ahead. Go ahead, Krista.
May I ask a question? I'm asking this to Tim, to Gina, and I don't know if this is done. When are teachers, new teachers, because we've hired a lot of new staff, and do we present these opportunities available to them to, in some way, and kind of encourage them to possibly want to coach or be in these extracurricular activities? Oh,
Do we say, here, look at all the lovely things you can do, come get involved?
So you want them, certainly to focus on their classroom instruction, but absolutely every applicant that comes to us, so that's, the final two make it to us. I talk about what else they like to do, not just because it helps us, it helps to build those relationships with students.
Oh, I agree. I
And it gives
totally
them
agree.
that trusted adult in the building. And when you feel that connection, you're going to feel a stronger connection to the school community in overall, and want to stay and be part of our faculty for years. So yes, I absolutely am looking at their outside interests and having those conversations with them about it.
Okay, because I remember Becky Balfour talking about when she started volleyball, I think was it Messina that she taught at before here? And she did it so that she could get to know the students better. She had never taught volleyball before. Coached volleyball before, and geez, she's done a pretty good job with it.
She's
so.
done.
She's done okay.
Linda, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in the year, we had 9 positions unfilled, and in fall, it was just 3, and all of those 9 positions were either assistant or JV.
So that's the athletics.
Athletics,
athletic
just in
position.
athletics I'm
Okay.
talking about, yeah.
That's great, thank you for
So,
that
and a lot of
information.
that is due to enrollment numbers.
Right.
And there's not a need for an
Right.
assistant.
One other question, so I'm looking at the high school extracurricular stipend table, and I see musical director, and I see musical director, 2 different, like, I understand the musical, maybe the person does the music, and then there's like the director who does the play portion of it, but I'm not seeing drama direction, like the fall play and the spring play. Does it all fall under one?
Is it play?
Tier
Yeah,
6.
yeah. Play fall, play spring.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I was looking for drama, the word drama. I'm also noticing that in the middle school, we're paying someone to do like makeup and props, or is that all just the same type of position? Like costume, makeup, drama, props, drama? The only reason I ask is because, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And like, for example, one of our art teachers did all of the costumes for the high school musical. Like I don't know what she did, if she pulled costumes and fixed costumes and whatever. I'm not seeing an opportunity for a stipend for her.
So-
Maybe there is one and I'm just not seeing it because I'm not savvy on this, but yeah,
I
go
have
ahead.
a strong feeling you're going to see an additional stipend for theater
Yeah.
in here, but not to say we didn't pay for those. This is sort of the easy way to look at the stipends,
Right.
but I will say that just looking at Tier 5 student council, going back to the years when this was my role, it is a one-person job at this rate, but I chose to work alongside another teacher, and we
And then you
split the
split the
stipend. So it was 2 of us working together. It made it a little bit fun.
Right.
Split the work.
Right.
And so it ends up being 2 people, but the same stipend amount
Okay.
total was paid out. So there were stipends paid for that work of the
Okay.
costumes. It just, you see it as play fall, play spring.
Okay.
So this actually was divided up between
Okay.
multiple people.
And that's the way they chose to do that.
Yes, but I
Okay.
don't know if that's the best choice,
I
and
don't,
so we're
I
gonna.
don't think it is. That's, my opinion would be to like, start to really create positions. I mean, I think you need more involvement in the play, from what I can see. I just think you need more people, more teachers involved. I mean, even just like somebody who puts together the program, somebody who does, so getting more people involved, it's like more and seeing. And then people seeing that the value and the amount of energy and money and time that goes into these things. So I would like to see that fleshed out a little bit more.
Sure.
My opinion. And then we can't change these because they're budgeted for this year, but we can talk about them for 2022, for 24. Okay. Well, because they're already in the budget for this
Well,
year
I
and that's
mean,
been
you-
approved. We can change them?
It doesn't, exactly. I
It
mean,
would,
if you,
it would impact how we spend our budget, but it
Correct.
doesn't.
Okay.
so in July, if there was something you felt was truly out of whack, you could make the vote right then and make the adjustment. It would just be up to the business office to work with me and we'd find out where the money would come
Be
from.
careful too, 'cause we don't know.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that sounds good. So we can talk about that, yeah? Yes, Mike? Oh.
Fred?
I know, I called you Mike, which is so weird. I don't know anybody named Mike.
I appreciate Andy's comment about why it's important for us to support these extracurriculars. I'm not in full agreement with what the literal statement that he made, and that is the showcasing of other things. Personally, I think that there are a lot of opportunities outside of school if people want to showcase their talents. However, the thing that's important to me about the extracurriculars that I think we need to support and look at is the degree to which they serve a function in our curricular activities. Leadership, responsibility.
Those skills, right.
Self-direction, all these things. So I don't want the public to think that we're just spending money to have a stage for them.
Right, that's a good
These
point.
things have shown tangible results for our students that directly translate to their achievement in those areas for which the school is unquestionably responsible, not just things that, so I don't mean to diminish what you say, Andy, but I just want to make sure that people understand, we're not just
That's
doing
excellent.
this as a feel-good. This isn't a trophy for everyone. These are activities that pay huge dividends in the success of our students in the areas of academic achievement,
Personal
social
growth.
responsibility,
Mhm.
personal growth, all of these things. So
Absolutely.
I'll shut up now.
No, great point, excellent point. So my understanding is this comes back to us in July with the adjustments that we've talked about. We can at that point even dig in further and suggest some increases if we have a little research or some time to kind of look and see if there's something specific. It would be valuable to know which positions really just have not gotten interest or, when we're really struggling. Because if we knew that, that this position hasn't been filled and it has, the only thing we can really do as a board is increase the stipend, so. There we go, more work, sorry. It's July. Okay. All right, so at this point, we are moving forward with discussion. No public input has come in and we're past the public input fine, so we're good. Okay, is there anything else about stipends? Great. Discussion, revenue and expense report that we will be looking at that with Linda, correct, Linda?
Okay. Well, once again, we're showing a large balance in the expenses the expenses we don't expect to spend at this point. We have a few weeks left in the fiscal year, and the business office is analyzing every purchase order that's open right now, and are we looking for an invoice, or can we close it and we're not gonna spend it? And what's really driving this $1,064,904 balance on the expense side is really predominantly special education. Over 75% of it comes from that. We have students who switched from residential programs to day programs, unfilled pair positions, and families who have declined services. And down in this transportation line, that correlates to savings in expenses there as well. For students who have moved out of the district, we're seeing savings in transportation. In addition, there's a large balance on the benefits side, the $282,000. That is savings in taxes, insurance, retirement, due to hiring savings and enrollment changes. So those things are not easily budgeted because we make our budget a year in advance and we don't know when these unexpected things are going to happen. A couple of points on the negative side, we do have in the instructional staff support line, there's a negative $144,000. That was the interactive flat panel purchases that the business office, or the business administrator has encumbered for $108,000. And then down in facilities, we have a lot of extra projects right now, including paving and exterior lighting. So that's the expense side of it. On the revenue side of it, again, another positive balance. We're showing a $586,000 balance here in excess of our budget that we had anticipated. And again, most of it's driven by special education aid. We had $122,190 over budget there that we didn't anticipate. And then down in the other line, if you'll recall, the $150,859, that is predominantly the health trust surplus we received, which was not expected. So bottom line is, we have, after we fund our maintenance trust, special ed trust, and retained fund balance, we would have a projected fund balance this year at this point projected $959,754. And I think Superintendent wanted to speak to a few things regarding that balance.
I did. I just wanted to let the board know, when we went through the budget process, working with the budget committee, we were projecting around $600,000 as a surplus to return. Two of the things that have come in that really have impacted that was extra revenue in special education aid, about $122,000 that Linda commented on, and then the health trust. If people recall, health trusts used to keep the balance, and they would just lower rates to districts. And then there was a court case over that, and it was decided that those funds need to be returned to both the employee and the employer. So that came out to be $180,000. So when I look at the typical projection, which is about $600,000, which is probably around 98%, somewhere right around that was spent of the budget. When you throw that $300,000 into that, that's when we're getting up into the $900,000 range, and why our surplus is large. That surplus represents probably about 4.5%. So when you really look at planning a budget 18 months out, because we're going to start in July for the fall of '23, I'm very comfortable with the efforts that Kelly has been putting forth and Linda's been putting forth around our revenue and expenses, because the goal is for us to obviously provide for the needs of the students, and we're able to do that. But it's a very fine margin, because if even one of those students who decided to move, or who went from a residential placement to a day placement, and that can be the difference between $250,000 to about 125 by making that shift. And that, again, for all her work over her many years here, was something that Amy did tremendously, that she taught Bob and she taught Lauren, and it continues to happen. So when we place a child in a residential placement, the goal is not for them to just be gone and be in that school for their career. It's how do we put in services and programming to bring them back? Because then you see the savings in not only the placement, but in the transportation. So part of my reason for wanting to touch on that was to talk about the balance, and then I did make the agenda adjustment to go over the STEM request. I had sent it out, and we had sent it to Dawn, and it'll be included in the minutes.
Before you jump into that.
Yes.
Can we talk more about?
Oh,
the
absolutely.
balance?
Absolutely.
Yep.
First of all, Linda, thank you very much. As always, you presented it in a very digestible way and understandable. And what this highlights, especially what you talked about on the expense side, is there's, between transportation and direct costs, there's close to $1 million right there for special education. And
That's surplus.
right, and for years and years and years, we have asked the community and the taxpayers to acknowledge the fact that we don't have a lot of control over special education. And in that context, we've asked for increases in the budget, and they have supported it. Is there a way to take this surplus and earmark it? Can we make a contribution to the Special Education Trust, or do something to essentially encumber that for special education, so that we're not diverting that elsewhere? And if not, then I would make a strong push to return that to the taxpayers, because just as we have asked for their support year after year, when special education has been an increasing burden on us, we've got windfall specifically for that same reason. I'd like to see that either stay available for special education or go back to the taxpayers.
The first question, if we were going to increase the special ed trust, we would have had to increase the number for the legislative body at that session.
Can we have a special meeting to do it?
We could, I think, with the number of 956, or approximately that number returning, is what I believe is the best way to go at the present time. And with the FY '24 budget creation, look at maybe doing an up to number from now on with the special ed trust. So if there was a surplus, make that the last one that we would fund, and then if there was a significant surplus from special ed, being able to allocate that with the legislative body's permission.
So you're saying stick with the projected fund balance as the return amount, which is 80% of our special education surplus, and going forward, leave the door open if this were to occur again.
Correct, because I agree with you, when we do have expenses in special ed, we try not to encumber them on the regular ed side because of the way we do our budget, and we don't,
And the fact that we sometimes get grant money to
right,
offset it.
exactly. And that's where all of a sudden, when that $122,000 extra in special ed aid comes in, it's a windfall. The problem that we face is that when we start the budget, they usually give us, say, budget 62% of what you expect to get in the budget. And then in a year like this, when the economy was good and you're fully funded at 67%, that's where you get to that 122,000.
No, I'm not faulting anyone for this being, I think
Right.
that this is just that, a windfall, but I want the community to have confidence that we ask when we need and we give back when we don't.
Right. And I think the piece we're doing is with the recent approval by the voters for the summer projects that are going on. This is a good year to give back because it will offset that large dollar amount when you look at all three districts having projects. And I think if we look at the special ed warrant as a up to amount, that would give us flexibility because you could then say, all right, we said to the voters we were going to go up to 400,000. We could do that now. The other piece would be to also have a budget discussion, which Kelly could have with the budget committee, on do we want to increase the percent that we're allowed to keep in the unreserved fund balance, because right now, that is, the retained fund balance is capped at 188,559.
The concern I have with that is that, that may have value in general, but it doesn't protect the special ed
I agree.
nature of it.
I agree, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
for places for, where you could park the revenue if you chose to utilize
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think that'd be great if we can make that available so that we're not asking and then asking again.
Right, and I do think, and Linda, correct me if you disagree, but both Linda and I feel that number is going to grow, just based on, as we wrap things up, and I'll give you an example, athletics, keeps a pool of money until they're completely done. So I think it was today or yesterday that Brian returned the unspent athletics, which was probably about $20,000, that wouldn't be included in this.
So are you projecting that we'll have essentially something approaching $1 million to return?
Yes.
Well,
Basically, we're gonna come down to
Unless
almost,
we-
does that,
if you funded that, I would still be giving, I'll probably still give back close to $1 million.
Yeah.
okay, well, I wanted to have that in our minds
Yep.
when we have the discussion about this, because I want to understand how they play against each other.
Yep.
Right, because we do have, in the encumbered column, almost $5 million. And we have 2 weeks left in our year. So, and not that we can't roll POs to the new year and protect that money, but every day I'm getting information from teachers and from athletics and from special ed, changing the purchase orders. And so it's just an ongoing process. So it's a flurry of activity right now, and we're trying to keep up with it, but
Okay.
I
Chris-
agree that it probably will grow.
When do you think you'll have a relatively firm number?
We'll have a firm number in July, because we have to get ready for our audit, and it's the first week in August this year. So we have to close our books before that happens, so in July we'll know.
And I know we're gonna discuss this tonight. do we have to make a decision on it tonight versus July?
I would suggest that we make a motion to encumber the funds, because the auditors would like to see that type of motion before the school year ends. And then if in July things have changed, we would be able to do that.
Or conversely, if in July the numbers say, hey.
We don't have any money, right?
No, I'm saying, if
Right.
they say, we've got, the encumbered money has been released, we can return the special ed surplus and do this, no problem, that would make me a lot more comfortable doing it.
So you're okay with voting on encumbering it, but then having a follow-up conversation in July?
If we support this, I am in favor of encumbering the funds to support it, but not spending them until we know the final picture.
I think that makes sense. Krista, did you have a question?
Well, I do have a question, because I'm trying to understand, Tom, what you're trying to do. Because we do have the special ed trust fund, and I think we want to put it at 250, and now it sounds like you're interested in putting it up to 400. But it seems like we're allocating that money to be something that we need to use if someone moves into town in November, and we need to worry about things like that. So my question is increasing that, as opposed to giving money back to the taxpayer that we don't spend, necessarily the best thing to do with the taxpayer? I'm asking
I'd rather give
because-
it back to them.
No, I agree, and I'd rather have the trust fund at 250 and kind of keep it at 250, because that's our emergency number. And I'd still want to continue to budget based on what we know. I agree that the taxpayers are very kind and very generous and are always willing to give us money, but at the same time, we are budgeting for that. That's not what that trust fund to me is for.
It's for like an emergency
If
right.
someone moves in the middle of a budget season in
Well,
which
it's-
we're not
it's-
ready.
It's for any, I thought it was for anything special education that comes up that
Isn't budgeted
that
for it.
was unbudgeted, and if we had to cover it, it would hinder our ability to continue to pay for the things in special, in regular education.
Right, I agree.
So, what Andy was proposing is another mechanism that, depending on what's going on, to smooth the curve, if you will. If we have a surplus in one year, and let's say we've built our budget now through March, and we now know that we're going to have expenditures come September that we hadn't known of in March, and we have a surplus, it would be nice to have a mechanism to earmark that money and roll it over. That was my thought.
That's why I'm trying to understand it.
It's a separate thing. For this gear in particular, if we have the means to return it to the taxpayers directly, that would be my first choice. My first.
Okay, and so a lot of this conversation could be postponed to a later date when we're starting to build the warrant, and we could have more of a debate on how we want to build the warrant for the special ed trust,
If we want to do that at all.
Right, we may not want to do it, but we should certainly maybe make a note that we want to at least talk about that in further as we go through this process. Yeah, you wrote it down? Good, Gina wrote it down, great.
Does
So
that
would
answer your question?
Yeah, that does, and I think Cindy, if you can talk to the budget committee and kind of see, what they're thinking in terms of,
Yeah, I think they're gonna be, I mean, I think they're gonna be hard pressed to put anything more than the 250, because they've been, pretty adamant about that 250 cap, and they're the ones that kinda decided that. I don't really
Yeah.
remember us having a tremendous amount of conversation about that.
well, maybe we need to have
The
a conversation about that more.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a
I think-
conversation for a later date when we're building, and we can, let the budget committee know that there's some members who would like to consider raising the cap, or having it up to, or that.
Or wording it, if,
differently,
legally,
right.
we could word
Right,
it where you
right,
could
right,
encumber it to a
absolutely.
certain- But,
Absolutely.
I mean, I understand, basically, you're saying right now, if you look at the spreadsheet, 743, you want at least the 743 to go back because it's all special ed.
That, and the related transportation portion.
So that's like, that's $1 million.
That's 346, and
Right.
let's say
Right.
2/3 of that, if it was special ed, that'd be $1 million flat.
Yeah, we'll work on that and have more concrete numbers for those, as we go forward, because, I just wanna clarify with Kelly and Linda, again, just on the transportation, what was regular ed and what was special ed.
Right.
Yeah, I was thinking that's
Because
not.
athletics
That's
are
not all
part of that
special
too.
ed.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
not all
that's-
special
yeah.
ed.
And
No,
yeah.
But I now understand the concept, you want the money that was not utilized for the other districts, plus the special education, and that should be kind of what I'll say, our minimum dollars that are going back to the taxpayers.
That was-
Because they generously
Yep.
support budgets so that we
Got
can
it.
support.
Got it.
I
Okay, so
gotcha.
we will have that, for July.
And thank you to Kelly and Linda, because it was, again, outstanding.
Yeah,
presentation.
excellent
you.
job.
And again, this is me speaking, if you don't agree, I'm very interested in hearing, that's my way. of
I'm
doing it.
following, digesting, and thinking, so that's where I am.
Then you're gonna regurgitate?
We'll probably go to sleep and forget about it, but, okay. So we have the,
I'm sorry, one more thing.
Sorry, go ahead,
Because it's
Linda.
not in these numbers, but I did want to say back to the health trust surplus, where we've talked about the 180,000 returned to our district. I did want to say that $50,000 was returned to our employees. So that's not reflected here because the money came in and we sent the money out. So I thought that was important for the public and for the
oh,
board
that's
to
great,
know.
that's great. And the transfer to food service fund balance, can you just explain that really quickly?
Yes, so that is the, on the you're talking about the 277,000?
Yes, yeah.
That's the balance. In the revenue lines, we have food service revenue.
Okay,
So our operating budget is considered Fund 10, our food service is Fund 21. We take that money, it's an accounting thing
Okay,
that happens. It's
okay.
not like we move money to different bank
Okay,
account.
right.
It happens when the auditors come in August.
okay,
And that's the money we're projecting that was the extra money we had in food service this year. That goes back to the food service budget.
budget, okay. So that's not like money in it's the food service budget, right?
It's not for us to spend.
And
right?
next year, this has totally nothing to do with, but next year, there will be no more
Correct.
free, there's still free and reduced lunch, but there's no more free lunch and free breakfast.
Free for everybody is
Right,
going away
okay.
at this point, as far as I know.
Because that was a federal program, right, okay. Thank you. Can we move, did you have more? No. Can we move on to the STEM
Yep.
request?
A couple of weeks back, I sat down with Gina, and we were looking at math and science, and we were just going over some test results, and doing a variety of discussions. And one of the things that we're seeing is our equipment in biology, chemistry, and some other areas is becoming very dated. And with some of the changes we've made at the elementary level, we're also noticing that more and more children learn via simulations. And we have seen that in the math program. It's much more, there's a lot of video content, there's a lot of, again, adjusting our teaching strategy to the learning strategies that the children are coming to us with. So that got me to a discussion of asking Gina to put together what we called a wish list for STEM. So she was kind enough to put the list that you have in front of you together. She could speak much better to any of the items on it than I can, as not a science person. And that brought us to a total of $78,268. When I had my separate discussion with Linda and Kelly and looked at the budget, and knowing that the 956 that we're projecting is most likely to grow, I then wanted to come to the board and ask you to consider accelerating this purchase, and rather than putting it in the FY24 budget, to fund it now so we could place an order in July and have this equipment in our classrooms for next fall, as we try to update what we're doing. And it's been a push that, under Gina's leadership, K-5, and then K-6, and then co-op, we really have made outstanding strides in the science areas. Every grade level at the elementaries now have a STEM project. Everything is built in. They're coming to the middle school. And we believe that we are now ready to utilize this equipment as well as the boards that were spoken about and those pieces to really take us to the next level. And it goes hand in hand with becoming basically a one-on-one computer environment next year, so all our students will be provided devices by us. And we'd be happy to take any questions. To Tom's earlier point, what I'd be looking for tonight is just to encumber the money for these purchases, and then if we decided at our July meeting that this is the way we want to go, Linda already has the money encumbered and has what I'll call the paper trail for the auditors when they ask, when was this approved?
If we wait and don't order until after our July meeting, would the stuff get here by the start of school?
It's a really good question.
Even if we order now, we'll get here.
Yeah, but I mean, a month earlier.
Are you asking that about if we could use this year's budget? Because,
No, she's asking about do we approve
Like
it now?
supply chain
by-
issue.
Oh, so that it can be ordered now instead of waiting for July to decide whether we want to.
So-
I just think
It
cover
needs
it
to
in
be
this
considered.
fiscal, that we wouldn't spend it.
So Linda, we've seen, at least right now, in terms of when we look at expenses, a balance of like $42,000 in regular education,
It's good.
$45,000 in co-curricular education. We're anticipating a $20,000 athletic budget surplus. Is that what I'm hearing? That might be coming in. So, I think to Tom's point, these items could be covered if that balance, continues, and that kind of, there's a lot of different line items here, the benefits line item, so I feel like it would be wise to allow for the purchase of these as soon as possible to get them in, because I think it's it's $78,000. I don't feel like it's a huge ask, and we would be still, I think, anticipating returning almost $1 million, if not $1 million to the taxpayers. I understand
Yeah,
the
before
process,
we get into
but,
the funding,
right.
can I ask some questions about the actual?
Yeah, go ahead.
How does the number 12 come about?
So we have a max of 24 students in a lab science course, so that would be 24 students working in groups of 2.
And does this cover any kind of, do you know what the service agreements or
So we've had a really strong relationship with Vernier way back in 2005. John Boucher and I brought all of this equipment to the high school science program. It's the same equipment that we brought in 2005.
Here's the reason for my question. Do you
Want them
get-
all at once.
Do you get an extra one so that if one goes down? Or are you confident enough in the reliability or the response time to get something fixed if something breaks?
You know what's great about the company? You call and then they answer. There's an actual person on the other end.
So-
And so they're very easy to work with. I don't think anyone would be upset if you increase that to 13.
I'm not
per.
looking to increase it by 8% just to do
get an
it,
extra,
but-
sure.
But if we feel this is important and you're sizing it directly to our student population
Sure.
and the class size, I know what happens when all of a sudden somebody's system is gone.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and lots of things get flaky.
And then the other question is what's happening with the equipment that is going to be decommissioned? Is it passed down, is it useless, is it resold, or is it a reasonable backup for what we've got?
Some of them can be reasonable backups. I also envision them being utilized in different courses, potentially shifted down to the middle school. For example, in here, sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but we have these microscopes right now. Our department chair at the high school transports himself the microscopes to the 7th grade classroom so that they can use microscopes. So this would eliminate the need for Rod to drive microscopes down to the middle school, because we would be investing in a higher quality, more current product for the high school, and then allowing our current products. Yeah. So this helps both buildings. Okay.
So fundamentally, my question to you is, thinking about reliability and the need for continuation, are there any adjustments you want to make on the fly to your request?
On the fly, not necessarily, because not all classes are 24, and I think knowing what I did in the classroom, you just shift to a group of 3, and then you just make
Okay.
it work, and then you budget for that
You don't have to
extra one.
explain,
But yeah.
we have the opportunity right now when we're formulating it.
But Cindy's calculating over here, so she.
Is there anyone,
It would be an extra 6,200 if we order one extra for every of the ones that she has 12 for.
so, are there any other questions on the presentation and the equipment and the numbers and the quantity and the quality?
The only thing would be that if you got what she's saying, I think this number you might want to have this number be up to 85.
So the motion would be up to 85.
That would include that option if they feel that it is employed. That's-
Okay, and they can decide.
I have to order one more.
Go ahead, Andy.
I was just gonna say, I feel quite confident, having worked with Linda over so many years and Kelly, our projections are usually very conservative. And I do believe this number is gonna grow, so if you wanted to, approve this tonight so that we could place the order, I feel quite confident that we'll be able to meet Tom's goal of returning that number to the taxpayer, from the special ed point of view, pretty much very, very close to the dollar, if not exceeding the dollar, and still do this purchase.
Can I just ask, I don't mind it being my goal, but do you share the goal? Is it the
Are you
board's
asking the
goal?
board?
Yeah.
I mean, I really want to return money to the taxpayers. I feel like, if you want to look at it from that perspective, I totally am fine with that. But I don't necessarily wrap my head around it in that way, but I appreciate what you're saying. So, but I do want to return a good portion of the money to the taxpayers. I just don't feel like this is that much to ask for, and I feel like this is really good stuff to move forward.
Would you be comfortable separating it, and whether we vote on it tonight or not, but making essentially a commitment that we're going to find a way to return approximately a minimum of $1 million, plus or minus, I don't know what you want that number to be, such that if in the end, some of this money gets paid for out of actual budget. I guess my point is, are we willing to make a commitment knowing now, whether it's a binding commitment or just a symbolic commitment to return to the taxpayers?
I certainly want to return as much money as we can to the taxpayers, but I also believe that I want to use this money for the education of our children, and if this is what our educators are telling us will help us to do that, and it's $78,000 or
85.
$86,000, I think that's money well spent. I don't feel like, to me, we're not saving that money for some obscure idea. We're saving it and we're spending it for something specifically directed to a curriculum starting in September, which is fantastic. And that's why I don't want us, that's why I would like, if we're going to do it, so that we can get it and not have waited 2 or 3 weeks so that it comes in 2 or 3 weeks late. I would hope that our teachers could have this by the time they get back. They have a few days to work with it before the students get there and be able to use it in some of the professional development. I certainly appreciate what you're saying, Tom.
Yeah, me too.
Want to return money to the taxpayer. I don't know if I feel comfortable saying a specific number right now and tying our hands so that we can't, because I do believe the taxpayers support us and want us to educate the kids. And so I do believe we're doing the job
Okay,
of
I hear
providing
you.
education.
I hear you and I understand you.
Anybody else?
I just, if I could.
Go ahead, Andy.
First of all, I just want to remind people that in the last 2 years, we've returned $3.4 million. So we're always going to try to return every dollar we don't need. The second thing is, please understand that This is a pre-buy to accelerate curriculum. So there'll be $86,000 that would have been in the next budget that won't be in the budget as we move forward.
Right. That makes sense to me.
Okay.
Okay, so when we get to deliberations, we can make a motion. We'll start with a motion to approve up to 85, and
Well,
then
do you like that idea, or do you wanna stick with the number they've got there?
I think 85 is good. I think that gives the assistant superintendent in charge of curriculum instruction some time to kind of, I want to use your whole title.
Yeah, but what about
Just give it time to like figure out what she really wants to do, and it gives you some leeway there. But it has to be for these types of items, clearly.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
Right, okay. So we need a facilities update from the, and then we'll move on to voting on this later.
Can I just drag you down one more rat hole?
Uh-huh, sure.
Is there anything non-STEM that has a similar?
I actually like this
immediate-
question, Tom.
Immediate need in our school? I mean, STEM is great and it's easily to quantify, but we're seeing more and more that other areas are becoming critically important to our student population. It may not be so capital intensive, but I'm wondering, we've made investments in some of the communications tools, like what are they?
Interactive.
Yeah,
platform.
the stuff the next generation smartboard thingies. But is there something else that merits similar level of consideration for support of our other areas of education?
I think you're going to see a couple of requests within curriculum for potential new courses, which would require us to make a decision if we're going to shift in that direction, which would require textbooks, resources, and people time. So you'll see that, and that those are in other areas.
In July, you think we'll
In
see
July,
that when we
yeah.
talk about curriculum and program of studies and all that, right?
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so now facilities update.
Oh, yeah, I just want to let you know that Monday starts the project for the HVAC systems, so the company will be here Monday. You may not know they were in April, and they did a lot of the insulation that had to be done up in the rafters and things like that to make that move forward. Next Wednesday, the company is coming to put the press box up. That will be- that will be done-
Hallelujah.
yeah, that will be done and in place by next Friday. unless
Curious, is there any press anymore?
I
Capcron?
Give them a step ladder.
VIP seating.
And then Lance, Kelly, Gina, and I meet every Tuesday. And we're coordinating the final pieces for the roofing, the paving, all of those projects, the lower parking lot, the new parking lot at the upper field. All of that will be going on in a whirlwind summer for Lance.
Great, thank you very much. All right, so we're gonna move on to deliberate. Are you set, Tom, or you're still in the room? Okay. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on the facilities update? Okay, moving on to deliberations. Let me get my thing here. I don't know how to say it. The first is an action regarding the maintenance trust fund. I'll put the motion on the floor, and if there's any discussion, deliberative discussion, we can do that. I need a motion to approve expenditures from the Hollis Brookline Maintenance Expendable Trust in the total amount of $200,000 as outlined in the public hearing. I need a motion by Beth, second by Kate. Is there any further discussion on the maintenance trust?
I think Tom has.
Tom!
Just to maintain continuity. I approve of the things that are being done. I do not approve paying for them out of the maintenance trust.
Mechanism, right.
I am voting against it because of the funding mechanism, not because of the work being done.
I appreciate you clarifying that for the voters and for the public. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, all in favor? 5, all opposed? 1. Motion carries 5-1. Okay, I have some questions on this next one, but I need a motion to approve the request for the 5-day trip to New York City scheduled for March 2023.
So moved.
Moved by Beth,
Second.
seconded by Cindy. Are there any other, I have questions, but does anyone have questions on the field trip that we saw last month? I'm gonna go first. if
Yeah,
that's
no,
okay.
not sure,
Okay.
but it's not in this month's packet, is it?
It is not in this month's packet, but it was in last month's
Right, the
packet. And so just questions to either Gina or Tim, or this field trip falls into the category, I don't, it's a category that I struggle with because it's a class and it happens during the school year. They don't go during break. And part of the curriculum for this class is to do performances. I will support this because I really want kids to have those opportunities, but I want to make sure that the students who cannot go, who choose not to go, will have the same curricular experience as the students who choose to go.
So I talked to Matt about this proposal, and the performance that the students who are going will include pieces that the students will be rehearsing throughout the year for their regular performances.
Okay.
So students who attend the field trip won't be doing additional performances or additional pieces. It's all work that they've prepared together
Great.
throughout the year.
Right.
The trip itself it will overlap a weekend, so it's 2.5 school days. I talked to Matt a little bit about the students who are unable or unwilling to attend, and essentially, as musicians, the work that's going on, the individualized work, whether it's preparing for solos, auditions, or auditions for All-State, or continued work on pieces that they're currently working on for upcoming performances. There's individualized work that students can continue on who choose not to, or who are unable to attend.
And then my other question is to us, I think. So, and it's just financially, these trips are expensive. And do we have a mechanism for students to apply for financial aid? And do we have thresholds outlined or procedures for that? We, the board, we, the administration. So is there a mechanism for that, for students to apply for, say, scholarships? Or, I know there's fundraising mechanisms, but is there any opportunity for students to apply for that?
When we have been made aware in the past of circumstances that was only financial from preventing a child from going, the administration has worked to resolve that issue.
Okay. So, but it's not a formal process?
No.
Okay.
because some people will come forward, some people will not. If we're aware of something, we will very tactfully reach out on occasion. But it really does come down to the family's decision.
And is that something the board would be interested, the policy committee, taking a look at?
Yes.
Is there anybody else from the board that would like to just take a look and see if maybe there's a policy out there in other districts that maybe could formalize the process? Or maybe it's not a policy, maybe it's just a procedure, but I think it might be wise for us to just take a look at it. If that's, I'm not getting a lot of heads shaking.
Yeah, I mean,
No, that makes sense.
we have procedures for some other things throughout the year that there has been funds in other years that things have been used for. I'm not, like, for graduation or whatever.
Well,
So there is a fund somewhere, I just don't know what the policy
Well, and
procedure is for it.
it could even be something that we bring to the attention of HB Elevates or the PTA or the Booster Club and possibly have, private donations. I know we have usually a request, and there's some donations that are made to the middle school for the DC trip. But I don't know if we have, I don't know if we need a formal process. Maybe we don't, but
I would support something, for example, that said that any student that qualifies for free and reduced lunch is automatically eligible for assistance with funding of extracurricular activity fees.
so I think, I don't want to debate too
I mean,
much tonight. I just want to
I think
I
that's
think
a
we
good way to
should,
tie it
I
in.
think we should put it into our policy committee, have some conversations, see what we have out there.
Tim's
Just-
got a thought.
That information is often held in confidence.
Yeah.
Students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch,
I
so
know.
accessing that information for anybody who's running a field trip
They
would
wouldn't be able to,
appropriate.
right.
They couldn't do it, but if the students knew that that was the situation, it would present perhaps a less scary way or intimidating way of asking for assistance. My concern right now is that with no mechanism, and I'm not saying that my proposal is the ideal mechanism, but with no mechanism in place that is acknowledged and handled, it becomes tough, and I'd rather see it more formalized, like financial aid for college or something.
Beth has a comment?
No, just, I think this is a much bigger can of worms to open. I think it's
Yeah.
important to have some of this in place, but I think there's also that can work against you too by self-identifying that I'm free and reduced lunch. But I think that it's something that we should definitely readdress.
We should
I
put
a
it
note
in the
too for-
policy
I
committee.
did
I think it's
already,
just something to talk about in policy. I don't want to go into
Yeah.
too much debate here.
I do have a comment about this.
I do,
proposal itself.
okay, you go ahead.
No, we could continue.
No, I just was gonna say, I'm so happy to see us with this on our plate. And, you know, there was a period in time where we had multiple, and I really want to encourage this. I don't want to in any way have this conversation discourage the staff from feeling like I totally support this. I just want to make sure it's clean in the process, especially financial, given coming out of COVID and all of that. Yeah.
And just to be clear, every student was offered the opportunity to go on this trip, or has been offered the opportunity? Or is it
Will
only
be.
certain
Not
kids
yet,
were
this is for
selected?
next year. So the students who are in honors choir and honors jazz band would have first eligibility,
Okay.
and then if they don't hit their cap, they would open it up to other students in other music classes.
And Tom, did you have one more question?
It's more of a comment building somewhat on what you said, but maybe a little bit stronger. I'm concerned about the actual cost of this particular trip. This one is surprisingly expensive for a domestic trip without air travel, and especially one is in an area that is built into the class activity. If someone in a household that had a student in band and another student in chorus, you're talking about an additional $4,000 you're asking them to pay.
I think it's 1,500 per,
It said 2,000.
was it? I thought it was
1985.
1985, 2000, okay. I thought it was 1585.
And my guess is that it's probably gonna be more than that by the time it actually comes through, because it's open.
He does comment that they'll be doing some fundraising, so, yeah.
We say that, I think this is an exceptionally costly trip for for the structure of it. I've seen the cost of trips escalate. This is almost like, definitely fivefold and almost tenfold from what it was 10 years ago.
I think we might just be dealing with that, though.
Well, but is that an appropriate ask to allow students to have this experience?
So I totally hear what you're saying, but I feel like that's for families to make that decision. I think as a board, we can approve the trip, and then we'll see how many kids want to go. I mean, that's really where it goes, you know? I mean, I don't think that the chaperones and the people who are trying to schedule these trips are choosing the most expensive options. I just think this is what they have out there. And I think the tour companies that are running student trips have not been able to run trips for a few years, so we might be seeing an escalation in prices, so, is there?
Seen it in hotel rooms and stuff in New York
Right,
City is
it's,
definitely gonna be
right,
much.
it's it's an expensive option.
So why go to New York?
I think they were invited by
Yes,
this.
they were, I do have a student.
They cultivated
yeah.
that invitation, though.
Right.
Yes, absolutely, but I think there is, my general impression, also being a mom of one of these students that intends to go, I mean, there's a lot of excitement in this, and it seems to be a lot of support, and there's been just insanely, big price changes, and, I mean, we're aware of that, it definitely caught my attention, and it's a concern,
And
but.
New York is 4 to 5 times the price
Right.
of
It
other large places.
Right.
When
Right.
Mike has been there, they
Right.
went to Cleveland, they
Right,
went to.
but given the nature of the, this is a musical, based on.
That's what I'm talking about.
No, I know, I agree, but this
They-
is, I think.
They played at the
there's-
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame,
Right.
they played
Yeah.
in Symphony Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
certainly-
think at this point, we just need to take a vote on this, because the motion's on the table, so, I'm gonna say all in favor?
Is there?
We made the motion, yes, didn't we? All, yeah, we did, Beth and
Yeah,
Cindy.
you're right.
Yeah.
A motion, okay, all in
That's when you're
favor?
getting your-
I think I have 5, and opposed? Tom, okay, great, thank you. At this point, we will take a motion to authorize the superintendent to hire, accept resignations, and terminate staff until the September board meeting and require notification to the board of such actions. And that's moved by
Second.
Tom and seconded by Beth. And you just notify us during the summer, right, at each meeting. So was that Beth and Tom again?
Yes.
Tom and Beth? Okay.
Tom made the motion, Beth second.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions and comments on this? This is a standard thing what we do. So that-
Holly, you kind of clarify what my question was gonna be, just for the record. So you are gonna notify at each board meeting or through email? Like, how is the
I'm gonna do
notification process gonna work?
both, because I think most of our final pieces will happen in the next couple of weeks.
Yep.
And then it'll be just maybe a sporadic one of somebody moving or something like that.
Yep.
And I'll either notify the chair and ask her to notify the board, or just send an update out to the board.
Yep. And in past, you've always kind of said why we do this during the summer too, just for, again, for the record, why we're doing this.
Sure.
To,
At this point of the year, we are very close to finalizing positions. We are in very competitive marketplace. Oftentimes, Tim will call me and let's say it's a physics position. If he's got somebody that's a yes, and we think there'll be a yes in my office, they might walk right over and we'll do the contract and be done, rather than have them be able to go sit in another interview and potentially end up in another district that's right next to us.
and wait a few weeks for
Correct.
final
Yep.
thing. Yep, thank you.
Okay, so all in favor? 6-0. Okay. The next is to see what action the board will take regarding the superintendent's recommendation to select Thomas Clausen as our New Hampshire labor law attorney. So I need a motion to approve that recommendation.
So moved.
Moved by Cindy.
Second.
Second by Beth. Is there any discussion on this, or do you want to
Just-
explain a little bit to the
Just
public?
so the public knows, longtime attorney for Hollis and the Hollis Brookline Co-op for labor and negotiations has been Tom Clausen. Tom Clausen has been working for Jackson Lewis. Tom just recently made the decision to become, to go into independent practice. He has reached out to us with the permission of Jackson Lewis to see if we would like to stay as a client. I provided the memo to the board, which was a confidential memo regarding legal services, and I am recommending that we stay with Tom. He's been doing outstanding work for many years on both the town side and the school side as far as negotiations. He understands our district. He's very available, living right over in Nashua, and I hope the board will support staying with him. I took the same, Gina took the same motion to the Hollis School Board, and they unanimously approved it.
Great. Any questions on that? Okay, all in favor? 6-0. Okay, next is the board member code of ethics. We actually approved this and took a formal vote on this, the four of us, but since we had so many board members missing, we kind of commented that we would do it kind of again, right? So I just need a motion that the board by roll call state agreement to adhere to policy BCA, board member code of ethics.
So moved.
Moved by Beth,
Second.
second by Kate. Sorry, I saw a hand, I heard a voice, it's all crazy. So,
It's all good.
we've done this already, so I just really want to go around, unless there's comments, we can do like a roll call vote, starting with Beth.
Beth, aye.
Kate, aye.
Tom, I.
Holly, aye.
Cindy, I.
Krista, aye.
Krista, aye. So that's 6-0. Motion carries. Okay, and now we're moving on to policy work. And that's why Tim is still here. Lucky Tim. So we have a couple of policies. I think we're starting with, no, we're starting with
IHAM.
not Tim. We're not starting with Tim. Okay. So the first one is IHAM, I-H-A-M. I'm going to put it on the floor and then we'll talk about it. So a motion to accept the second reading of policy IHAM, health, education, and exemption from instruction. Before I finish this, should we do adopt? Did we make any changes?
No changes between the first and second reading.
Okay, so let's do adopt. So I'm going to restate that. Motion by member to accept the second reading and adopt.
Waive the third.
Waive the third, thank you. Can you make the damn motion? Waive the third and adopt policy IHAM, health, education, and exemption from instruction. I need a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Beth. Second by Tom. I swear, I'm never going to get this right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Does anyone from the policy committee want to speak to this?
I can speak to it. So, there were no changes. The one comment was regarding the specific language within the change, which is the parents, guardians are afforded affirmative rights with respect to instruction. And the language was selected by a member of the policy committee at the time, and while it's non-traditional, it states what we intend, so we didn't feel that there was a need to switch it. Parents are given 2 weeks' notice, advance notice, to receive the materials. And so that's what it says. It just says it in a slightly different way, and we felt comfortable with it.
Are there any questions or comments on that? So all those in favor? 6-0, motion carries. Okay. The next one is KEC. So I need a motion to accept the second reading, waive the third, and adopt policy KEC, reconsideration of instructional materials.
So moved.
Moved by Beth, second by Tom. Okay. Again, Gina, do you?
Yep. No
Sorry.
changes were made between the first and the second, which is probably why you went ahead and said waive the third and adopt. The original changes that we approved last month were simply the discussion of, we don't have a form, so a request in writing to the principal.
Yeah, it was just a logistical change. The
Yes.
principal no longer,
It's clarifying what we actually
yeah,
do.
right, okay. So are there any questions or comments? All in favor? 6-0, okay. So this is where we're getting into. So we're gonna have the first reading. Are we waiving subsequent readings on
I
this?
didn't
think we were.
I don't know why that's in there. So, this would be a motion to accept for first reading policy JF enrollment policy as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Beth,
Second.
second by Kate. And this is where, just to clarify for the public, policy committee has had a small subgroup of people that Tim will kind of define who those are, and they're looking specifically at any policy that kind of mentions enrollment and attendance and
Credits.
courses and credits, because we really are looking at all of that and procedures as it relates to that in the student handbook and in the program of studies, so that we can be more consistent, because we've had some, well, you can speak to that.
Some
Right,
inconsistencies.
so Tim, I'll let you open up on this one, because,
Yep, so as you can see, there's some new language at the start of this policy. We felt this language was necessary. It applies to what we consider to be our responsibility as public educators. So students from years 6 to 18, it is the responsibility of the parents to enroll their children in school. And when we start talking about enrollment, then you get into what we consider to be full-time enrollment, which was the original intent in looking at this policy. You'll see there, we added some language for the purposes of ensuring appropriate pace and progress towards earning the 23 credit Hollis Brookline High School diploma. Full-time shall be defined as actively enrolled in a minimum of 6 approved, in accordance with IMBC, which we'll talk about in a minute, courses and/or credits. And we chose that language particularly because it applies to placeholders, enrollments, that may or may not be a full credit course. So you might be enrolled in, say, a TA course that's a quarter of a credit for half a semester or a half a credit for a full year, but it is a placeholder for one of your 7 periods in that day. And we also use the language 6 approved in accordance with IMBC. So the alternative credit option, which we'll talk about separately in a minute, includes a process that we follow internally, a procedure that we follow internally to approve classes that students are enrolled in that will qualify them for full-time status. So if a student is taking 5 courses at Hollis Brookline High School and enrolls in a VLAX course through our process as an alternative credit, and it is an approved class, then they would be considered a full-time student. They would be enrolled full-time. And we did also remove some language in there that we didn't feel applied. We did take out classes for a full-time instructional day. that instructional day, it's kind of evolved beyond that, and beyond just the instructional day. Students who are enrolled in online learning happens morning, noon, and night, weekends, and whatnot. So we didn't really feel like that that applied. And vocational technical school is not necessarily an alternative credit. We work in collaboration with receiving schools.
Right, they're not alternative credit options, they're credit options.
It's credit.
They're just credit,
Yep,
right.
Yep. And we also changed the language at the bottom there. Shall be for fifth-year seniors and special education students, or remove special education students to include language specialized plan, which would include a Section 504 plan. So it's a little bit more all-encompassing in the event a student's specialized plan dictates any exception to this policy. So it would have to be within a plan.
Would that also apply to students who are traveling to other districts for coursework? Do we allow them to have less than 6 if transportation impedes it?
Are you talking about CTE or are you talking about other courses?
CTE, or I don't know if we do other things, but CTE specifically, but other, I don't know what other, let's say it's a college course, that would apply to, that would be considered a specialized plan, correct?
No, so as Holly just mentioned, if you take those, we are issuing credit for those. So it's a 2 for 3 though, based on the travel. They're gonna get 2 credits, but utilize 3 periods of their day. So the rest of their day would need to be fully subscribed, because you have 7 opportunities, and 3 of those are taken up by 2 credits worth of CTE, if that makes sense.
And part of this policy, Tom, one of the things that we wanted to include is the school counselor's oversight in ensuring appropriate pace towards the 23 credit. So if a student is enrolled in CTE and that's a 2 for 3, right? So you're taking 3 periods of the day and you're getting 2 credits. If you're not then filling the rest of your schedule with coursework, you're likely not on pace for what we consider to be the appropriate, the 23 credit.
Well, that was another question that I had was, is it necessary or is it appropriate to specify the 23 credit in this policy? Because if we do make changes, do we want to have to come back and change this policy, if we make changes to the definition of the requirements for Hollis Brookline High School diploma, as opposed to the alternative diploma?
State standard.
So if we change the definition of, do we want to have to change this policy, or do we just want to say, for the purposes of ensuring appropriate pace and progress towards earning the Hollis Brookline High School diploma?
So remove the 23.
Right.
Yeah, and so I think that brings up a perfect example of how this became a rabbit hole for us.
Yeah.
So Tim, Amanda Zeller, Chantel Clardy, and myself have been working for months and months, and you start talking at this, and then you look at this policy, and then you look at IHBA. I mean, it seems like it kept going, and we finally said, well, we have to figure out where the board stands on a couple of these, so that can direct the work on all the others. We felt it was very important for explaining why. We weren't trying to control anybody's lives here. We just wanted to make it very clear that, in order to get to that final
To
point.
make the math work.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're
we
not
have
a
to
full-time
follow-
student, then that, and you get to your senior year and we've allowed you to do alternative plans, and then you get to senior year and you don't have that, you don't have the credits to graduate. That's on us. We want to make sure that we have policies in place and procedures in place that don't allow someone to
So you
go.
prefer to keep it locked into this?
No, I prefer to make sure that we keep for the purpose of ensuring appropriate pace and progress toward earning the Hollis Brookline High School diploma, but I mean, I don't
We
think
can take that back to
removing the
policy and
23
just talk
yeah.
about whether or not that's gonna, how many different things, like, we can make a note that that's a comment, and then we can come back next month. We'll look at it in policy. You have
Okay.
this small committee of people, you can look at it, and maybe you can make a case for why you want the 23 credit language in, and maybe there's a case for not. I mean, but I think what we're looking for as a policy committee, for those members who are not on the policy committee, is, this is the right, is this the right direction, right? I mean, this is the first of a series of policies that are gonna come to you from this small committee, and they need to know that this is like going in the right direction. Or if there's people here who say, you know, wait a second, I don't like this.
I
That's
guess
kind
the
of-
important question that I have to answer that, your question is, what was the driving force to make this change?
We had more than one definition of what a full-time student was at Hollis Brookline High School, and that impacted a variety of different things, including Latin honors, including athletic participation.
So when you say we had, do we have it in different
Places.
versions of it in policy?
It's a little complicated. We refer to internal procedures in policy, and then within the internal procedures, there were some contradictory definitions. So, and it only appeared,
So is this the definition that you want to propagate throughout?
Yes.
yes, so starting with this policy, then we'll be able to adjust
Okay.
other corresponding policy.
But in terms of the actual full-time status, you saw it in the athletic handbook, you saw it in the student handbook, and they varied. So this
So
right.
there were other definitions of what a full-time student is?
Yes.
So we need to coordinate simultaneous approval and changes?
So those other documents are not board-approved documents?
No, but they need to change, because if they
Yes.
are,
Right, they will be, that's what, there's an entire spreadsheet of work, but what they need is for us to make the approvals of the policies.
Yeah.
And most of the policies are not really the problem, it's just we wanna clean up the language, make sure that they're driving, so then all the procedures can be married against those. So I think that's why this is the process, and I think I sent all of you an email to explain that that's what's been going on for the last year. It's just we haven't really talked about it because we've been talking about it in policy.
okay.
So, but we'll bring that back, the 23 credit, see what, you know, everyone at policy says, maybe what the team that you're working with says, and we can come back with, a decision or a suggestion, you know, that you could approve. Are there any other questions on this?
Just the and/or, do you really want the and? Is it courses or credits, or does it have to be 6 courses?
Some courses are only half credit.
Right,
One of the
Some are
things
two.
that we also discussed was that,
so I'm just wondering, is it, you could have to have 6 courses, or you have to have 6 credits, but you have to have, is there a situation where you have to have 6 courses and credits?
so, not necessarily, but what we also discussed was this policy as a co-op policy does govern the middle school where there's not credit-bearing courses. So we felt like and/or applied, and feel free to punch a hole in that, because without credit-bearing courses here, courses would apply. And then at the high school, you might be enrolled in something that,
Is there an instance where 6 credits, but not, could be accrued without having 6 courses?
yes,
Yeah, like ELO, like an extra,
you could be
No, I'm
doing
not
the
saying-
CTE is a double.
Because you're taking culinary, let's say, it's one class, but you're getting 2 credits for it.
so how about we take that back too?
I've
The
got a note
and/or,
for that,
like we kinda see how, play it out a little bit and see if we can come up with some examples of why it should be an and/or, or maybe it doesn't need to be an and/or. Okay? So that's what we'll do. I'd like to take a vote on the first reading. We're definitely just at first reading here. All those in favor? 6, Cindy?
Well, it says we did a first reading on tonight, so that's where
Yeah.
that's the only one that we're gonna do, we're not doing anything else.
Just a first read for tonight, yes.
Because she already typed it on there, so it's like.
Yeah, we usually put it on, so,
Yeah.
okay, so that is
Yeah,
a,
we somehow have first
She's
and
hoping.
adopt for the rest. And
Yeah, I
that's
don't know
not
why they're all the same.
intentional. Yeah, that was not intentional.
I'll just take, I must have
It's all,
done that.
it's all good. Copy and paste, it works. I
right,
know,
it's
just-
fine,
I didn't
it's
touch
fine.
it till now.
No, I saw that, I'm not gonna read that way, I got it.
Got it.
Okay. Okay, so I need a motion to accept for first reading, policy IMBC, alternative credit options as presented. Is that the
So-
new, is that the one that we're on now? Yes, okay.
So moved.
Moved by Beth,
Second.
second by Kate. Again, this is, back to you, Tim, or Gina, or both of you.
So the alternative credit application, I'm sorry, the alternative credit option, policy, we did adjust, we adjusted some language, particular, the form that we use, which is an internal form. We discussed how, the language alternative credit application, in somewhat similar light to what we were just talking about, alternative enrollment form seemed to apply, more appropriately. We removed, again, some language that we felt was a little outdated. Students may take classes during the regular school day with pre-approval by the principal or the designee. A student who enrolls in an online learning platform, that doesn't really have a time frame necessarily, so we didn't really think like that language applied. A reduced day form shall accompany this request if the student falls below the 6.0 credit requirement. So we were talking about the definition before of full-time student. This was a place randomly where it fell in policy and not in other places for some reason. The reduced day form is an internal procedure, and in a similar light to what we've talked about before, where we don't want to necessarily have to go back and change policy, we took that language out. It is included in our alternative enrollment form, and we do have, we do quantify it on the form, but we pulled it out of the language for the alt credit policy.
Tim, can I just add to that?
Yeah, of course.
So another piece was, we wanted to make sure with, let's say, the school counselor was changing, or that we had that intentional conversation about both alternative credit, but also a reduced day at the same time. And maybe it's not applicable at this bottom, because it doesn't reduce that day, or maybe it is, but with it being on the same form, because they're so tied into each other, it just seemed like it was, like a safeguard was in place to make sure that we're on track for that student to meet those graduation requirements and not needing potentially two different forms to achieve the same thing. So,
So a student who's applying for an all credit form will have the conversation with a counselor about a reduced day. That's part of that conversation. It's on the same form. We still do have a reduced day form separately for students who are just looking to reduce their day and don't want to be full-time. That's a separate conversation. But for students who are applying for an alternative credit enrollment, that form includes both the alt credit application as well as a reduced day form, just to at least have that ensure that conversation is taking place, again, for that guidance, school counselor oversight for the appropriate pace towards graduation.
Where is the?
We still have a little bit more, Tim, a little bit more on the,
On the next
Yeah,
page? Yep,
right.
yep. So the next page, we talked about,
Where is the wording that you're referring to about the day?
so one,
it's
two,
like
three,
paragraph
four,
4, maybe
five.
5.
Paragraph 5, it's the
Students
last
taking
line.
approved alternative credit options. Students, I think that's it. No, it's
It's
here.
the last line of
it's
that.
struck through. Yeah,
Struck through.
Oh,
Students.
so you're getting rid of it.
Yeah.
correct, sorry, yeah.
Because it's incorporated into the alternative enrollment form.
Doesn't need to be in policy.
Right.
I got you.
Go
Okay,
ahead,
I
Tim.
thought you were adding it in.
Sorry, no. And then we also found some language in here that we didn't feel was necessarily in place or current practice. If you look on the second page of the policy, students who are permitted to take an alternative credit option during the school day may be assigned a teacher to monitor student progress. We don't have internal teachers grading alternative credit options. We don't have teachers grading VLAX courses. We don't have teachers grading courses that would fall under an alt credit application, nor supervising assessments in those alt credit options. So we didn't think that was current practice. We didn't feel like it applied. We also removed the language about a teacher may supervise no more than 10 students participating in online internet-based courses. We do have a position at the high school within our Choices program where the term online internet-based courses does apply. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's an alternative credit. Our Odysseyware and
Edgenuity.
thank you, Edgenuity courses are things that we award credit for, and our teacher supervises far more than 10 students in students who are enrolled in that platform. So we pulled that language as well. And if you scroll down a little bit, dual credit, again, didn't necessarily apply to an alternative credit. Those are credits we award. So students who are enrolled in a course with us and they're getting credit at NCC or another institution of higher ed, that's not necessarily an
What's interdisciplinary credit? That's the second bullet on that list.
Yep.
I'm not familiar with the term.
That'd be like senior
So
quest?
this would,
So yeah, that's
Yeah.
the
senior
first thing
quest.
that
Is that
popped into
senior
my
quest?
mind.
Yeah.
Independent study
Yeah.
type of opportunity.
Yep.
Yeah. Like where you're working with maybe more than one.
like a humanities
It's
as
humanity,
opposed
right.
to English.
But
or
why would that be considered an alternate method of awarding credit?
a
Is
good
it
question.
because leaning towards graduation requirements that it meets multiple disciplines?
Potentially, also if
Like hits your math and it also hits your,
potentially if you are bringing in an experience that's not from a credit-bearing institution. So VLAX is easy because it's a New Hampshire
structured.
school, so
Yeah.
it's just a transfer credit. So really, what if you are bringing in a program that you did at Harvard and you'd like to be awarded credit? That's a potential opportunity to do that. If it wasn't a course, it was more of an experience of some type and it was interdisciplinary.
it sounds, but I guess what I'm, the hang up I've got, it sounds like it may accompany another mechanism, but interdisciplinary credited. And so this makes it sound to me like you can double count something.
So if you were to earn, let's say we granted 2 credits for a humanities experience, 1 credit could be awarded to social studies and 1 credit could be awarded to English. I haven't come across that, but I didn't feel so strongly that that would never happen, as opposed to dual credit. It's not alternate, so let's get rid of that.
Does this leave an
component.
option for a single credit course to be counted twice? Does this leave the door open to say, it counts for you're counting it for English and you're counting it for math, so that's 2 credits?
No.
Okay.
But it does expand the definition a little bit so that we can include more
Yeah,
things.
I just don't want us to get
Right.
caught in another
And
loophole.
I understand the whole dual credit thing because that's really on the other institution. We're
Yeah, if you're getting credit with us.
if you're getting credit with SNU, that's, right.
Yep.
Right. Okay, gotcha.
And then we didn't feel that, as policy of the board, that alternative methods for awarding of credit may include early graduation. We didn't have examples of where that would apply with an
Yeah, there's no
alternative.
credit for early graduation. You just achieve your
You
credits
just achieve
early.
your credits early.
And so, yeah,
Is this first reading?
yes,
Yeah.
But it's a pre-existing policy.
yes,
I was
yes.
just wondering.
We have worked on this policy extensively.
I just,
Right.
I had to see the 3rd page.
Yeah, yeah. Are there any other questions? I think we'll bring the comments back to policy. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. At this point, I'd like to take a vote. All those in favor of first read? 6-0.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we're moving to GBCD. Okay, and this is also
This is a
first read.
tough one.
So a motion to accept the first read of GBCD, policy GBCD, criminal history records check, background investigation as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Beth, second by Tom. And the policy committee has been working on this one, Gina, so I'm sure
Yeah,
Gina-
so there were some changes in the RSA that required a couple changes here and there. And some of it is updating the language of what we use, and nothing changes what we do. This is what we do. We've been following the law, and we've gone above and beyond what was required in prior years, but now it is required that it is a component of our policy. So that is why you are seeing so many changes at once in policy.
Just an observation, the first line you went from his, her to there, but there's a whole lot of other
Okay.
he, she. they.
Yeah, we should probably change all of theirs to there.
There were so many,
Yeah.
there's so many underlines, it's hard to find, but absolutely, we'll do that.
So, if I'm reading this correctly, A says, you ask the person, can you tell us anything that falls into these categories? And then B says that if your subsequent check shows up different things and they didn't tell you about them, they're automatically disqualified.
Yeah. Grounds for disqualification.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Shall be grounds for disqualification from consideration for employment withdrawal or any offer of
But
employment.
it doesn't mean you have to.
Well, that's what shall means.
That's my question, because if someone made an error of omission, but you don't feel that it was done maliciously.
Maliciously,
or
like
with intent,
they forgot something, or yeah.
Or didn't realize that fell under that category.
There seems like there's leeway in there.
Does the language require that you not consider them? This is where we miss Liz, what the shall.
No, I mean, shall is shall, it doesn't mean.
We've talked about that word shall, but I'm trying to remember where we landed on it.
So
but-
Well, there's shall, but then shall be grounds for, instead of shall be
It does-
disqualified.
right.
I think
think
That
there's.
will be grounds.
Correct.
Right,
Yes,
I
and
think
that's-
shall be
No,
gives you the.
it's grounds for, but does that mean you have to act on those grounds? I don't know. I just highlight this as,
Yeah,
you
we will
should
get,
ask
we will
the
look.
question about
We
it.
can look, we can always,
Yeah.
ask the question of an attorney as well.
Call Liz. No, I'm just kidding.
And I just got sort of bogged down with all of the different definitions
Yeah.
of who's covered with, especially with the volunteers, where the sections include volunteers, then you've got a whole other section on volunteers, and I couldn't tell if there was any conflicting, but if it's all coming out of a approved template, I'm not one to be able to, I don't know how much of this is from the template and how much is how it got put into this, so I just want to highlight that as a question.
That's something we might be able to answer more directly next month as well.
Yeah.
Like, how much of this is the template, how much of this is pulled
Yeah.
from other things?
Yeah.
Can we
And then-
make a note of that?
Yep. I'm good to know.
I was surprised that substitute teachers seem to have a less of a requirement than volunteers do.
We can take a look at that as well. Are you good? Like, can we move forward? And then, is there any other questions? Anybody else find things that they find? Because that is interesting. But it's all from the RSA, right? So,
We have a higher standard for our volunteers.
I was gonna say, our district.
That
has
is,
the
that
same
was
substitutes
our-
as it does for volunteers. 'cause
Yeah.
I've done both of
So
them.
then I would, because this language, I think is lower for
For
the
substitute.
substitutes. So you may want to check and see if they reconcile.
Okay, yep.
good
it.
suggestion. Any other suggestions? All those, you good? Okay, all those in favor?
Do we get to see the background checks?
Do we, the superintendent does.
Because
The-
it says here that we have to approve, approve the criminal background, or criminal record checks?
Yes, he does.
Which is satisfactory.
No,
Absolutely.
we, the board. It says, final offer of employment, to the final offer of
Oh.
employment. Based upon complete, maybe there's a punctuation, maybe we have to approve the offer, but the way it's worded, it sounds like we have to approve the criminal records check.
Can you tell me where you're specifically
I,
looking?
the first sentence,
H,
final
I.
offer of employment, the first sentence.
Okay. Thank you
That
so
does
much,
read,
Tom. We'll
yeah.
take a look
And
at
that's
that as well.
existing language, but we'll take a look at that to see if that means you kind of determine what's acceptable and what's not, if our,
Right? Okay.
Okay, so can we call the vote again?
Or it could be district.
All those in favor?
You want
6-0.
the first read, but we read it.
Yeah, no, I'm good, I'm good. I asked if we were ready, and you didn't have any more questions, and then you have more questions, so like,
Reading.
great. Okay,
For the first time.
oh, that's what you're not supposed to be doing, Tom. You're supposed to read, have your questions right here, and then you can check,
Tom.
check, check. I had all my questions answered, boop, boop, boop. Yeah, and then what's on there is just not like, process, boy, oh boy.
KHB.
Okay, KHB, I need a motion to accept for first read, KHB advertising in schools as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Beth. By Tom. Okay, so this is coming to you because I've had questions about this from HB Elevates, from the Booster Club, different things, and I wanted to make sure that we can see, and I think we decided in policy that although we don't allow advertising in schools, according to our first sentence, we actually have multiple opportunities to allow advertising in schools, and one of them is school publications may accept and publish paid advertising under established procedures. So for example, there's opportunities for programs or yearbooks or T-shirts, because we consider those school publications. We also have the sentence, nothing herein shall be construed to preclude the board from providing attribution to entities or individuals that contribute financially or otherwise to the school district, or from naming educational facilities after corporations or individuals who've made extraordinary contributions to the school community. We're not changing any of that, but we interpret that as being that a part of that could be the hanging of banners, the, putting up of signs. However, we talked about this in policy, we need a procedure for that to take place. So the reason the policy is coming to you is because we will be working on developing a procedure whereby clubs like Booster Club or Elevates might go out and create a sponsorship program for putting banners up at the turf field, let's say, but then they would have an application process that would go to the superintendent for approval. So we just wanted to be clear that everybody had an understanding that that's where we were gonna go in terms of procedure, and we decided that such determinations, changing that to naming educational facilities, that is the one thing that needs to be within the school board's sole discretion. So the procedure that we lay out for banners may involve the school board, may not. We're gonna see how that works out and how we move through that. But obviously, if we're gonna name an educational facility, that would come to the school board. So that's why we changed that language there.
In that context.
Did I get that right?
In that
Pretty much?
context, I thought we believed that a change was needed elsewhere if HB Elevates wants to have advertisement banners in the turf field, which was,
I think that's what I'm saying, is I think we're reading it again and saying that since it says, nothing herein shall be construed to preclude the school board from providing attribution to entities or individuals.
advertisement is not an attribution.
Okay,
I personally do not interpret anything in here as overriding the prohibition of advertising.
anyone else have any strong feelings on that?
Explain that to me, I'm,
The first sentence of the policy prohibits promoting the interests of any commercial or other non-school agency. And when we read through the rest of it, the conclusion that we came to was we can put up plaques, banners, whatever, statues that say thank you to John Doe or to Coca-Cola for supporting our schools. What we can't put up is a banner that says, drink Coca-Cola.
Okay, so it needs to say, this, you feel like the banner would need to say, thank you to,
It can thank and attribute them for supporting the schools.
thank you for your support.
But we can't promote a product, a
Does
commercial
that make,
product.
so that's just a distinction, that's,
And
just
the
reading the definition.
the information that was given to me by HB Elevates was specifically, can we put up advertisements inside the field?
so maybe the answer is you can put up
And
thank
is
you
an
banners.
advertisement, considered Coca-Cola? Or is it drink Coca-Cola? So if we put up a Coca-Cola banner, instead of saying thank you to Coca-Cola,
That is an advertisement.
so
So,
anything like a
Because what we are allowed to
Accounting
do
firm.
is we are allowed to, we can, allow to recognize their contribution, their support.
so
If you
putting
just
thank
put a
you on
name
top
up,
of
if you
it?
just put a name up, that is a promotion, that's an impression, a branding activity.
okay, so here's the question to the board. Is the board feeling like they don't want, a consensus of the board maybe, how do you feel about banners at the turf field? That's where it comes, what it comes down to. We can make the language, we can change the policy, like, we can make it what we, do we want advertising banners? Do we want just thank you banners, sponsorship banners, like, thank you for your
Proud
sponsorship?
sponsor,
Coca-Cola, thank you for your sponsorship, would that be considered? What does the board, because this is what we need, the policy committee needs direction on, is where do you want to go with this? Because it is a fundraising mechanism, and it's simply like, we have school publications may accept and publish paid advertising under established procedures, meaning the yearbook, the CAV-CRON, the live streaming video is like a school publication. There's all sorts of things that could get advertising. So are we gonna limit that and say we're not gonna allow that at the turf field? It's a question. I'm not advocating, it's a question. And I'd like to get a sense of the board so that we as a policy committee can move forward.
My past preference is reflected in the current policy,
Okay.
which is, I am not, I don't want to promote a product, I do not wanna advertise. I think it comes into personal preferences and it opens up the
Okay.
whole school to a bad, discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to banners and I'm not opposed to thanking sponsorships, but, if you just say advertisement and you don't have, and I'm trusting that the form would be that, but, you're gonna have vote for, you're gonna have
Right,
political, and you're gonna
right.
have
Well,
all
we would
kinds
have a
of other-
process, an
Right,
approval
so
process, and we would have in that, right.
As long as the form is, I'm not opposed to banners I think it's a good thing. I mean,
But thank you for your sponsorship
Right,
or
or-
a sponsor.
So
Yeah.
we're
Right.
banners in terms of sponsorship, so
Like,
as opposed to advertising.
With a thank
which it is advertising, but
Right.
we're just calling it sponsorship.
exactly.
I'm not following you, Krista. I'm not opposed to a banner that is an attribution. I am opposed to a banner that is a promotion.
So if a banner
The fact that
says,
it's in a banner format doesn't make it a promotion.
Right.
It's what's on the banner.
so you wanted to say thank you for your support.
I don't want it to be linked to a
you
pure
understanding
branding
the difference?
opportunity.
Yeah.
I think I am, but I think we all should go back to policy and maybe bring some specific
Yeah,
examples. 'Cause it
okay.
might be easier to discuss that way.
All right.
than-
So policy committee will take all of this back. Oh, I need to do this in vote. Okay, thank you.
And my view is somewhat influenced by the question that was asked of me by HB Elevate.
Right, I understand.
Mhm.
Yeah, so, okay, so this was just first read.
Yep.
We've got feedback. We will go back, look at this again, see what changes we can make. And maybe we will, in the time period, reach out to maybe Jim O'Shaughnessy and get sort of his take legally, what other school systems might be doing in terms of the process that people are laying out, the procedures that they lay out, so that we can at least, I'd like to move forward with it or not move forward with it. But I'd like an answer to those groups that are asking those questions. And I do think that things like the program at the, for performances and stuff, that could be a really beneficial way to get some nice printed materials to go with those things, so, and we do allow that, so. All those in favor of this for first read? 6-0, okay, I think that was our last policy, however, I've been reminded that we do need a motion to approve up to $85,000 for the purchase of the items in the STEM, in the science presentation from tonight.
So moved.
STEM
Moved by
wish list.
STEM wish list, from the STEM wish list. Moved by Beth and seconded by Kate. We've already had a lot of discussion on this. At this point, the first motion is to just approve it, and which mean it could be spent immediately. So I'd like to just, are there any more comments? Okay, all those in favor? 6-0, great. Okay, I think at this point, are we doing, yes, sir,
I have one, just.
we have a non-public too, right?
Yes, we do have one public. But just for the policy committee, if I could ask that the policy committee just start to take a look at our live streaming of events. Okay, I mean, we stream graduation, we've done a lot of things. What's happened recently, though, there's been events at events, meaning like I'm at a football game and there's an injury on the field. And now this is being live streamed across the country, and it's not necessarily, we don't have a policy around that.
Okay,
And we should really just start to discuss that, you know, what is our procedure? Obviously, we would shut it down, but it's not as easy as you think sometimes when you're live streaming, to make that happen. So I just wanna put that on the policy committee's piece.
you got it?
Got it.
And, I'm reaching out to some other districts who are also live streaming like we do, and just seeing what their practices are.
Yeah, and on top of that, there's the privacy content.
Right.
Well, I
right.
think that's a big part of.
Yeah, so there's those two components. Not that we wanna go away from live streaming, but at the same time, we just wanna have some guidelines for it.
And the policy committee is gonna have a very busy July, I
Yes.
can just say that. So just before we do report out from the process observer, just quickly, agenda building, I just want to remind the board, and Andy already touched on it, but in July, we will be doing it's time for us to kind of express our priorities and wishes in terms of budgeting, but I would also suggest, and you're gonna start up with curriculum, that we would take a look at the program of studies, whether we put it in the packet or not. The program of studies is available on the website at the high school. But I think we should be familiar with that because I'd love to give Tim some feedback on the program of studies prior to going into the program of studies work in the fall. And if you have some requests or comments or things like that. So that's kind of what I was thinking, and I've kind of run that by some people.
I think we should submit all administrators to a body language interpretation.
Yeah, that was a little like, okay, but it's fine. Tim's no worries, Tim.
I think some of them are.
You don't have to
yeah.
have, I'm not looking for a program of studies presentation at all, Tim. This is not on you. This is the board reading through the program of studies and looking at it and saying, wow.
Giving
what
you
right. Do we
advanced input.
really, like, I would love to see a class on basket weaving, like, that's what that's for.
I'm looking for a program of studies tap dance. Or interpretive dance.
So, and then I need a report.
Performed by the administration.
Yes.
We're gonna do the process observer now, and then we'll go into non-public. So, that would be you, Krista. What did I do?
Well, we gained a lot of time from the public hearing not being very long and no public input.
Thank you to our public.
So we went into deliberations at 7:37, a little bit later than we anticipated, but we had good discussions regarding the revenue report, the STEM requests, and the updates. So even though we are a little bit, we're not really over in time, but we did go a little bit longer in our deliberations, but they were good, and we got a lot of deliberations done, and I think this was very student-driven, so I think we did a good job.
Great, thank you so much. Where are we going into non-public? Is it
We have a,
compensation and reputation?
yes, reputation.
Okay, so I need a motion that the board by roll call go into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91-A:3, Part 2, compensation and also reputation. So, moved by Beth,
Second.
second by Tom. I need a roll call vote.
Beth, aye.
Kate, aye.
Holly, aye.
Cindy, I. Krista, I.
Okay, so we are now in non-public at 8:39.
Mark, could you